Hello everybody, and welcome back to another Kings of War tournament report. I'm Visibly Riley, and today we're here to talk about the 3rd edition Kickoff event, which was a one-day tournament I went to in Kent, Washington this past weekend, featuring 16 players. Now, the astute among you have no doubt noticed I've been gone for the past couple of weeks, and that is because the second car of this calendar year has been totaled, or of my cars, neither of which, while I was driving, both of them are accidents, but whew, it's real bad, and yeah, just in terms of gaming, it's extra hard because I live in an area of the United States that is not conducive to any travel that's not by car. So, for example, it takes me about an hour and 40 minutes to 2 hours to get to work each morning, and that is with, quote, light traffic, and I have to take 3 buses. So, enough about that though, we're here to talk about the event. So, we use the Northern King scoring method for the battle points in this tournament, meaning that it is a 15-10-5 for win, draw, loss, and then it's modified for amount of points you killed and then the amount of objectives you hold. So there's no differential. It doesn't matter how your opponent is doing, it just matters how well you're doing. So it's an interesting one, and it's out of 25 possible points, I want to say, each round. So yeah, and then there were 3 games. There was no painting requirement, although you could, and there was a sportsmanship score, but both the painting rubric, which was scored by a single judge, and the sportsmanship rubric were, for the most part, as objective as it gets, which is to say that it's just a rubric that you know beforehand going into it. So the sportsmanship was stuff like, was your opponent on time? You know, did they not cheat? Stuff like that. Simple questions, simple yes, no, and then there were a few extra points that were voted from your favorite opponent and your favorite army, so your player's choice and stuff like that. I'm very against those points being part of best overall because they're the most subjective of the points, and they're not. It's a place for people who might be a little unscrupulous, or people who are just, you know, not really paying attention to the rules or just have different ideas to ding opponents. So I'm not a big fan of that, but otherwise I love best overall, which I'm sure you guys know. So anyway, let's get into the list itself, starting out with I brought Undead. So I brought a Horde of Revenants with the Hammer of Measured Force and Undead Giant Rats upgrade. Then I brought 2 regiments of Wraiths, 2 regiments of Zombies, 2 hordes of Wights, one of whom has the Brew of Haste and the other the Blade of Slashing, 2 Necromancers, both of whom have Surge 6 and Weakness 2, and one has the Inspiring Talisman. Then I have a Revenant King on Undead Great Flying Worm, oh, that is a mouthful, with the Brew of Sharpness and Surge 8 upgrades, a Vampire Lord on Undead Dragon with the Chalice of Wrath, and Morgoth the Faceless. So with the idea on this army, it's pretty elite. For 2,300 points. I only have 12 drops, so it's a fairly elite army. But I essentially have 2 Vampire Lords on dragons, with that Revenant King having the Brew of Sharpness. I have plenty of Surge. The weakness is really good in this list, and Morgoth is, of course, I think a little overbalanced there, but I don't think, you know, in fact, I almost dropped Morgoth from the list because I think Ilona is so good as well. So at least internally, I think the army is well balanced, even if it's not necessarily externally well balanced. But that's a discussion for another day, and I, don't necessarily believe one or the other. I did end up bringing this army mostly because while playing my Empire of Dust lately, I've noticed that, I don't know, it just kind of feels like what it was in the previous edition, only weaker, right? So the things that were powerful, or the things that I was bringing in my previous armies, which were things like the Idelf Shobuk and the Soul Snare and Skeleton Warriors, are already what you bring in the new one, while some of the fringe units like the Chariots have been downgraded, which is different from the Undead, who have a lot of units that have been shuffled around, like the Zombies. the ubiquitous zombies have been downplayed, but they're more of a side grade now compared to the way that ghouls and skeletons work, and the rework for wraiths and wights is really inspired. And of course, I hate the Cursed High Priest. I think it is ridiculous how many points that thing costs, especially compared to a Necromancer. So like, if there's a Cursed High Priest and there's a Lich King upgrade, why isn't there just a Cursed Priest, which is like the Necromancer of Empire Dust? But anyway, that's a different thing. This is the list I brought, and I do think it's pretty okay. Anyway, let's move forward into the games, or into my first opponent, which was playing Ratkin. So this is an opponent I have known for quite a few years now. Although we've never actually played Kings of War against each other, I've been in many events with them. So, and this list I did work with them in constructing, and by that I mean we just shared some list ideas and bounced ideas off each other because we both play Ratkin as well. Starting out, it has 2 hordes of nightmares, one of whom has the Blessing of the Gods. Then we have a horde of warriors with Plague Pots and Dragon Shard Shield, 4 regiments of Vermintide, 4 troops of Clawshots, 3 Shredders, 2 Mutant Rat Fiends, and 2 Brood Mothers, one of whom has the Conjurer's Staff. My thoughts on this army are, I mean, it's definitely experimental. Ratkin went through some pretty big revision, like what I was just saying about the Empire Dust, and they're not really revised at all. Like what was good then is good now. That's not true of Ratkin. They are very different now. So I'm not exactly sold on a lot of this stuff. I think it's probably a little too heavy into the claw shots and shredders. If you're gonna go this heavy into the shooting, I'd probably try to fit some death engines in there instead, but I'm not sure what I would drop. So I do think warriors, mutant rat fiends, and brood mothers, along with Vermintide regiments, are all excellent units. So, you know, we'll see how it does in the end. And then here is our mission, which is Fool's Gold. So in Fool's Gold, you put out your 10 bluff tokens, which you get 2 zeros, 2 1s, and 1 2-point token for each player. If you don't know what the bluff tokens are, they are otherwise identical to objectives, so they have to be 12 inches away from or more than 12 away from each other, more than 3 from impassable, including the board edge. And in this tournament, one of our players graciously donated a set for every player for them to use. So that was sort of the tournament prize for playing. That was nice. But in Fool's Gold, you start with the first player putting down a bluff token on their opponent's side of the table. You keep putting them down until all 10 are out. And then at the end of round 3, you flip all the counters, and you get 1 victory point for every one that's marked 1, 2 for ones that are worth 2, and 0 for ones that are marked 0. So it's pretty simple, but it is an interesting scenario and one of the new ones. So let's move on to the table. So here is the table. Let's talk about the terrain real quick. On the right hand side, we start with a height 3 hill with a height 2 obstacle on top of it. Then right above that, we have a height 8 forest. I thought that was an interesting number because 8 is not high enough to block the charge from a titan on a hill, but it's also 1 higher than, you know, the tallest monster, which I believe is a 5. So I'm not exactly sure what. Oh no, it isn't. No, the tallest monster is a 4, so it is 1 higher. So it blocks, I think, the Kraken, which is height 5, but otherwise, just a weird number. So, and then to the left of that, we have a height 1 pond. To the left of that, we have another height 1 pond. Right below that, we have a height 4 impassable with this wall got broken up in the meantime, but it's supposed to actually just be a line like that. But with a height 2 obstacle attached to it. To the right of it, we have another height 3 hill. Right below that, we have a height 8 forest. And then finally, off here to the right, we have another height 4 impassable. So that's the terrain. Let's talk about the armies real quick, starting with the Ratkin on the left. So on the very far left, we see the first troop of Clawshots. Then back in the main battle line, we have the second troop of Clawshots. Right in front of that is the first Mutant Rat Fiend. Then to the right of that, we have the Nightmares. I believe these ones have no item. In front of them, we have the first regiment of Vermintide. Then behind all that, we have the first Shredder. In front and to the right a little bit, we have the first Broodmother, and this Broodmother is the one with the Conjurer's Wand. Right in front of them, we have the Horde of Warriors with the Plague Pot and the Dragon Shard Shield. Behind them, we have the second regiment of Vermintide. Behind that, we have the third troop of claw shots. Then to the right of that, we have the second claw shot, or the second shredder. Then to the right of that, we have the third shredder. In front of that mess, we have the second broodmother. And then to the right of that broodmother, we have the second horde of nightmares. These have blessing of the gods. And then in front of them, we have the third and fourth regiments of vermintide. Behind that, we have the fourth and final claw shot, and finally, the second mutant rat fiend. So a pretty congested deployment, and this is what I was talking about with the shooting, right? These units aren't that hard for me to get to, even with like, I have a lot of flyers, I have dragons and all that, but even with my limited movement, I mean, I'm not running a lot of flying individuals or ogre characters or anything like that, I can still get to those. So I'm not completely sold on spamming shredders and claw shots just yet. And speaking of that, let's talk about the undead deployment. So starting on the right, we have my first horde of whites. These ones, I believe, are +1 speed. Then we have the horde of revenants with the hammer of measured force and the undead rats upgrades. Behind them, this dragon model is, of course, the vampire lord on dragon. Then to the left of that, we have the 2 regiments of wraiths. Behind them, the second horde of whites with the blade of slashing. I actually forgot a model. Over here, we have my necromancer with weakness, and I believe this is the inspiring one, although it might, no, it's not. This is the one without inspiring. Then over here, back on the left, we have Morgoth. To the left of that, we have the inspiring necromancer with weakness 2. Then we have both the regiments of zombies, and finally we have my revenant king on undead beast. So yeah, this is it's a pretty close deployment, but with the Ratkin setting up in this very small area, there's no reason for me to spread out, so I did not. And a lot of my army just ignores this terrain, so it doesn't bug me any. The objectives are, starting on the bottom left, we have my opponent's first objective. Then we have one on the hill here. We have another in the center. This one is mine. Down here, we have my opponent's third objective, my second objective up here, then my third objective, and then I believe all the other objectives, the other 4, are off here on the left side of the table where no one can see them, or they're placed into corners, 3 and 3 off. Although I will mention, while I was playing this game, I just randomized my tokens, so I did not look at them at all. I don't see the point in it. I mean, I do see the point in it. It's just, whatever. It's fun to not know, and your opponent can't glean what you don't know. So with that out of the way, let's get into the game itself with turn 1. So starting off, we have the Undead winning the roll-off and deciding to advance forward in the way Undead do, meaning we pretty much just, advanced our line, up to the center of the table. I'm looking to sort of grab these areas and then zone out the flanks with my 2 flyers, as the Ratkin have very little in the way of, well, actually 0 flyers and very little in the way of combat ability beyond the 2 rat fiends. I'm not really worried about anything else. The nightmares are okay in a fight, but not great, and everything else is pretty much trash in a fight. So with that said, yeah, I decided to run forward with my 2 with my wraiths here, mostly so I could threaten the this pond area right here, as my opponent was obviously going to throw the warriors into that, but and I found out later my opponent was not aware that wraiths had gained Strider, and that was going to be a rude awakening for them. But yeah, in the end, it doesn't really matter to me too much. I just want to make sure that my Strider have access to this pond, because if they stay out of it, I'll just fly into it, and if they move into it, I'll charge into it. So either or, it's good for me. And then with my 2 flyers, again, I decided to take my Vampire Lord and hide it behind this forest, so the majority of my opponent's shooting cannot see it. The claw shots over here cannot see, then the claw shots here can't see, neither of these 2 shredders can see, so it's just these 2 claw shots and this 1 shredder. So, and I'm not really afraid of that amount of damage. It's still worrisome, as vampires are not fearless, although mine does have fury. That does not help if I get wavered due to shooting. So I'm trying to prevent a lucky turn 1 by hiding behind that forest. The Revenant King is not quite as lucky. I have to sort of just take all the shooting that I can by running it. I ran 20 inches forward and then just absorb all the shooting. I don't think this shredder can see me, or this shredder, so it'll just be all the claw shots can see me, and then one shredder can see me. But if my opponent wants to really get anything out of these two shredders after firing them first, they'll probably also have to commit one of the claw shots into shooting at me. And there's just a lot of cover on this table, as again, even height, what used to be height flat terrain in version 3 is at least height 1. So the vast majority of my army has cover pretty much all the time. So, yep, let's see how it all turns out with the, here we go. So I also decided to go for some weakness casts with my two wizards. And then I also, if we roll a picture back, have moved Mortibris up here behind the hill, completely hidden behind line of sight. So there's no way for my opponent to get to it. And then the next turn I can just fly 20 to wherever I want. But I am going to go for some double weaknesses right now on the units that I can reach. So the first weakness goes on to, well, I'll talk about that in a second. The first weakness ends up going on to this one Broodmother, because I did devise, I came up with something that I think is probably a good idea to do with Broodmothers, because they can cast Drain Life onto their own Vermintide or warriors, but that's less relevant. Because you can cast onto Vermintide, I think you want to do that turn one, even on turns where you can't heal with that, because you want to get the Vermintide to a point where even 1 point of damage will kill them. So against a decent combat list, right? You don't want to do that against, you know, another 5 like goblins or more Ratkin, but against an elite undead list, it's a pretty good idea, because they're probably going to do more than 1 point of damage to you, and you want to make sure that you are not wavered. So you want to push yourself to either getting double one and you're okay, or not getting double one and you're dead. So I think that's actually a pretty important thing to do. So I decided to cast weakness onto the Broodmother, also because, well, mostly just because of that, but also because I couldn't reach anything else, and I don't think that these nightmares are going to want to advance on my dragon. And I'm probably actually outside of the 18 inch. No, I'm definitely not outside of 18 inches. But if they do advance right there, it'll expose a flank to some wraiths, so I don't think they're going to want to do that. And I can't see a whole lot else with this Necromancer down here. The other Necromancer is going to just go for a weakness as well. I end up going on to this unit, or this other Broodmother, and I missed the weakness. My opponent played pretty well here. I mean, it's a normal play, but it's also a good one in that I wanted to get weakness actually onto these Shredders, but I can't see them due to the, you know, the height of these units right in front of me, and they're slightly out of range. So even were I not directly behind my own units, they'd still be too far away. So I go for that. Lastly, Morgoth has what is it called? Mind Fog as a spell. So I'm like, meh, I'll throw a Mind Fog out onto a Vermintide unit. This would be, in my opinion, the most troublesome one for my opponent, because it's very difficult to get around this unit, while this unit doesn't really have anything to do if the back one is wavered. So I throw it, it's an 11 to get it, and I hit the 11. So yeah, very lucky waver there for my first turn spell, and that'll spell the end of turn 1 for the Undead. So let's move into the Ratkin. This is just an end of turn shot showing off. It looks like I failed that second weakness onto this Broodmother, but whatever. So on turn 1, Ratkin, I know my opponent just tried to reshuffle a little bit. I think they were feeling a little down about their deployment at this point, which I don't think is necessarily fair. I think they still had plenty of time to remix things and get it a little bit better, but they do some interesting moves here. So first off, we have the Rat Fiend here deciding to back up, and I'm like, why? Because if the Rat Fiend backs up, my dragon can still fly right past its line of sight, probably into these claw troops, or at least into this this water feature to gain cover. So oh, and yeah, so I can get into this water feature anyway, so I don't know why you back up, because I'm going to dodge your line of sight no matter what you do here. And then on top of it, they also made it so the Nightmares don't have a great line of sight either. So I have a a very good line where I can just hide, right, with my big targets. And I don't really have to engage yet because Ratkin, this seems like a lot of shooting, but it's actually not that much damage potential because nightmares are not particularly good now that breath weapons have been nerfed. And all these claw shots, well, they're good, but I'll have cover with almost my entire army if I want it. So I don't really see it. And then the other Rat Fiend, the other thing I'm really worried about in this list is this other Rat Fiend, and it moves to put its leader point into the woods, which is important to block my advance on this flank, but it doesn't do anything to actually stop my dragon from doing the exact same thing as my worm over here and just flying around the side and hiding, right? So there's nothing there to worry me. I think if these nightmares were pointed more like this, I mean, not like directly towards the board edge, but if they were, I guess, like this, right? So they could see, and there was no place within 10 for me to land, because 20 might be worth it. Even then you probably wouldn't want 20, but anyway, you just want to make sure that you can charge me with something if I fly past your main unit, and in this case my opponent did not do that, so I'm not so sold on that. Otherwise the rest of the army's movement is pretty much what I expect. The claw shots sit still, the vermintide sits still, because why? The warriors advance into this terrain, and I am certain my opponent was thinking that I didn't have any pathfinder and the terrain was going to be a problem like it is for most undead, but I do have these strider units, so yikes. And then with all the shooting my opponent can bear, they end up getting 2 points onto my whites, which is every unit that can't shoot at this flying worm shoots at the whites. Get two damage, which is not great, but I guess it's better than nothing. And then my dragon ends up taking, I think, 7 or 8 damage there, which is quite a bit, but thankfully does not just get one shot, so that's good. And we'll move into turn 2. So turn 2, and the undead, yeah, this is what I was talking about with the position. And to my opponent's credit, it's very difficult to play Ratkin right now just because they're very, very different from how they were. And I think my opponent was trying something with this army, and it's difficult to get your movement down when you've changed your entire modus operandi, right? Like, it's a huge part of the game, and when you've shifted it so much, it's hard to get it right. And they were noticing that they were making mistakes, just not while they were doing them. So it's, hindsight's 20/20, but it's better to have that than nothing. So first off, I take my Revenant King and I go into one of the units of claw shots because, again, I'm just looking to kill off some units and also hide from these 2 combat units, so I might as well take the claw shot since they were offered. The rest of my army advances forward, just, again, keeping a bit of this U going on, because my opponent can charge. I like, and this is a pretty normal thing to do with your armies, and basically, I want to be out of range of the nightmares charging me, but I'm inviting any of these units to come into me. So, for example, this unit of Vermintide and this Rat Fiend can both charge into this unit of whites. That is very dangerous, but I do also have a weakness available that I can get onto the Rat Fiend, so as long as I've got 2 weaknesses to cast. So, as long as I can land 1 on the Rat Fiend, I'm not too afraid, as a Rat Fiend's only crushing 2. So, knocking it down to crush 1, it's got, I think, 10 attacks on 3s with crush 1, so 3s and 4s. That's not a terribly large amount of damage. It's like 4 to 5. And then the Vermintide, yeah, they're not going to do much of anything. Maybe 1, maybe 2 damage total, which is not even enough for a roll on the whites. And if they do that, I will pretty easily be able to flank charge and kill both units, or at least kill the Vermintide and probably severely damage the Rat Fiend. But at least it'll be out of position because it'll be on my side of the table. The same thing is true for these Wraiths, where I've placed them within charge range of the Warriors, but not within charge range of any of these other units in the back. And then they're out of the line of sight of this Vermintide. So 1 unit charging me through that pond. So 6 is to hit, 6 is to damage. Even if they pop Plague Pots next turn, I'll probably kill them because, again, I can just swing in a flank, right? And I can't flank charge all these units at once, obviously. But if they do go into me with these, right, like the Warriors take precedent over the Vermintide while the Rat Fiend takes precedent over the Warriors, so on and so forth. It's just a standard flowchart. So yeah, it's just something to think about while you're advancing forward, especially with a tough army like Undead. The rest of the rest of my army, I say, but there's only 2 models that really matter, which is the Vampire Lord leapfrogs the forest to hide from the Rat Fiend here, getting ready for an Icy Breath onto these claw shots, which I did not realize were defense 5 now. That's really good, because I believe they used to be, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe they used to be defense 4, and then the sharpshooters were 5. But defense 5, that's a really good unit. And not to say it was a bad unit before, but it's an even better one. And then lastly, I have Mortibrus right here, just peeking his little head out. Yep, again, just leapfrogs my opponent's line, because being able to fly 20, or having permanent boots of levitation on a unit like Morgoth, that's ridiculous. So yeah, I just fly over there. I have my pick of targets. I am within 6 inches of my Revenant King, so I'm gonna go for likely a unit of Vermintide, because I want to get max max healing onto the Revenant King right now while I can. I probably would go for a claw shot if they were defense 4. Or a Shredder, but I believe both are defense 5 now. And I know the Shredders used to be 4, so that's a significant improvement for fighting against little units, little backfield units like Morgoth or a flying character in general. So pretty good. And that's about it. Again, these zombies are just hiding behind the wood because they're defense 2. They'll just get shredded if I pop them out by my opponent shooting, and there's just no reason to, because until turn 3 I don't know what's, if these points are worth something, or if these ones, or really where I'm gonna end up being. So oftentimes I'll just take my regiments of zombies and just hide them the game until the end, and then I can grab my backfield objectives, right? Pretty simple, but just shows you the power of zombies. And here is the end of turn shot. You can see up here in the top left, the Revenant King does make short work of those claw shots. I believe I sunk like 6 or 7 wounds on him and just popped him in one go. Then I've got Morgoth, who cast into this unit Vermintide, gets a waver, and actually does some pretty significant damage. It's like 4 or 5 there. So 4 or 5 heal on my dragon or my worm as well. And so that's pretty good. And then with my Icy Breath, I manage 1 wound onto the claw shots here, and of course I get a waiver there. So some really lucky waivers this game, getting both those units. And then I also got some good weaknesses off. So first weakness goes off onto the Rat Fiend, meaning I don't have to worry anymore. And then the second weakness, I go for the nearest Broodmother to my dragon and to Morgoth, because again, Drain Life does have that Pierce 1. So now with no Pierce, I'm really not afraid of that spell at all. So anyway, moving into it, let's see what the Ratkin can do with their turn 2. So Ratkin turn 2. First off, it might look like the Rat Fiend here is not facing directly forward, so it's going to get flanked by that dragon. No, we just forgot to move the model because none of our models were all a little big, so they're not cooperating very well with each other. And my opponent just, we talked about it before. It was perfectly fine. The intent was there, and they just hadn't pushed the model that side. So it is facing this way towards me. And then speaking of that Rat Fiend, it's actually blocking quite a bit of line of sight for my dragon. So everything over here, it is living in the shadow of the beast here, so I can't get any flanks or rears on anything funny like these nightmares. Like, oh, that's an easy flank. Well, I can't actually see them because we're both height 6, so no line of sight. And the same thing with the Broodmother and then the warriors and everything. But I still have a sliver of line of sight this way, and my opponent couldn't get this any better because the Rat Fiend could not back up or it could not back up its distance, which I believe it's speed 7, so 3.5 inches. It couldn't back that up and an inch away from me, so it just had to sit there and change its facing instead. So I think that's legal. I know you can issue a halt if you're within 1, but maybe you can't even change your... That's dumb if you can't change your facing, and I'm not going to play it that way. So anyway, yeah, it changes its facing and stares right at me. The rest of the army just does, as you can see, these nightmares. Just think my opponent is not using them very well. I do know that they haven't used nightmares a lot in the past because, I've been to a lot of events with this player, and nightmares in version 2 I don't think were worth running at all. And in version 3, they're really only worth running because of the dearth of combat units in Ratkin right now. They're okay, but again, that breath attack nerf, really impacts them as they don't have any piercing on it. But anyway, I think that they're a fine unit. My point is that I don't think my opponent has the best experience with them, and they're not an easy to use unit. So I do think that they should probably be, you know, either pushing more aggressively into my lines here and just getting charged, and then, you know, getting into the grind, which is where they're good because they're defense 5. They can have very high nerve with the amount of rally, because again, Rat Fiends now rally, and then so they can have that, you know, +2 nerve, so it becomes 16/18's defense 5, and then I believe they also have Fury, or maybe that was just the brutes before, but either way, that should be fine to hold off against these wraiths, and they can start grinding with their Crush 1 and Vicious Melee. So who knows? Instead, my opponent holds back with them and doesn't really face any of the side threats. I mean, they gotta handle these big monsters in their flanks, or I'll just shred them that way. If they keep facing towards these defense 6 regiments and this defense 5-24 unit, it's just gonna be hard for them to win the game. But anyway, I digress. We have these nightmares doing that exact thing of facing towards my dragon, but by facing toward this way, I'm not sure they're going to be able to complete a charge onto me, so they're just going to plan to shoot me, I guess. I won't have cover, but, you know, it's 18 shots on 4s and 5s. I don't know, maybe that's good, but I would probably have faced towards the vampire to limit its mobility, although maybe, well, no, it can't land here either, unless it does a charge. So anyway, I guess it's fine. And then the vampire can't see because the other Rat Fiend just basically pivots itself out of the woods and faces directly towards the dragon. So both the Rat Fiends are essentially out of the game right now because I can just dance around them with my flying monsters, and they're not facing or threatening any of my other units. So I've neutered my opponent's list, I guess. So not looking great, but yeah, I do. Yeah, okay. Well, let's see what turn 3 looks like, because I forgot to mention this. This is turn 2 for Ratkin, of course. So with turn 2 here, my opponent does have a lot of shooting left. So because I've only removed 1 unit of claw shots, and then I wavered this one, so it turns the face towards my dragon. But that's it. So with all my opponent's shooting, they fire into my my wounded whites over here, and it's a fair amount of shooting. You know, it's three shredders who have 3 shots each on 5s, and then D3, I think they're D3 hits each, pierce 1 with shattering, and then of course the 1 unit of claw shots. The other unit of claw shots can't see anything anymore, so it's turned to face towards the table again. But that's a fair amount of shooting. And yeah, that's not a lot of damage though. It's only 5 more damage, putting me on 7. They do have shattering, so it's +1 to that break check, meaning it's a 9 to kill him. Not that likely. I am also rerollable, and yeah, my opponent gets it anyway. So 9 rerollable, boom. First blood to the Ratkin there. That's a pretty important unit, so maybe the Ratkin, if they can hold off against the dragons for this turn and then kill them on my next turn, we'd probably have a good game going on here. So let's see what happens in Undead turn 3. So Undead turn 3, yeah, we keep charging, and now the main line, or my main battle line, has joined the battle. We've got my wraiths here going into some Vermintide. I don't really care if I kill them or not. It's irrelevant to me. I'm just looking to to jam them up or tar pit them right here, because if I kill them, that's fine. I'll advance forward and then tar pit the nightmares. Or if I don't kill them, that's fine. The nightmares then can't charge me because the nightmares have to align this way, and the Vermintide actually can't align this way if the warriors stay, or if the warriors charge these wraiths. So I'm just trying to gum things up, because the wraiths will eventually do damage, and then if the Vermintide charge just the wraiths, that's also fine, because they might not do any damage, and if they don't do any damage, I can still fly, nimble, and all that nonsense. So seems pretty good to me. My Great Worm, I keep wanting to call this a dragon. I really wish they had just called it a dragon. But anyway, the Undead Worm charges into one of the Shredders. Again, just looking to get some kills on its way through. I could have gone into these claw shots, but I actually wanted to be over here, orient a bit more on my left side of the field, just in case, because I don't know what the, like this I don't know what this marker is worth in terms of points, or this one, and my army is quickly running away from them, so I want to see what they're worth right now. And speaking of that, my zombies also advance into the woods because my opponent does not have that much shooting left that can really target them with this hill in the way, with all these units in the way, because Ratkin are mostly height 1 shooting. So that's the idea there. I have advanced. They also have heavy piercing, which is not going to do anything because I'm defense 2. Yeah, so, and then I have my Vampire Lord on Dragon go into the claw shots that he did 1 wound against, and the idea there, again, is just to dodge this Rat Fiend. I don't want to fight it. If I could just avoid the Rat Fiends the entire game, I'll go for that, but I'll probably have to fight them eventually. But I'll keep pushing that back turn by turn to try to force the issue into my opponent's court. So yeah, if I kill off these claw shots, I can then face towards the majority of my opponent's army. These Nightmares, again, they're not facing towards me, so there's no reason not to do this, right? The Rat Fiend can't see me, the Nightmares can't see me. The best my opponent can do is shoot me, which is it. And then I fly Morgoth right on over here to be even more annoying. I don't have... Morgoth took a couple of wounds. I think these Nightmares shot at him, did like 2 or 3. I don't regen any of them back, but I have another unit of Vermintide to just drain life 9 onto, so he'll probably be at full health by the end of this. And then, speaking of Vermintide, I'd take one of my units of Whites and charge into them. Again, I'm just trying to, because the Rat Fiend is facing this way, I'm trying to make use of that because it can't charge into me. Even if these warriors charge into my flank, they've got 25 attacks normally, so they'll have 50 attacks, but they'll be 6s to hit and 5s to wound, and I can even put them to 6s to wound if I cast weakness onto them. So I just don't think that'll do anything. And it might be a tight fit because this Vermintide will have to do something. So I'd have to kill this Vermintide, then be dumb enough not to reform, then have this Vermintide charge me, so on and so forth, right? It's difficult to even get this in the flank. So I'm not worried about it. I did want to send... I thought my rates could get a little closer to these warriors because I basically just want to be an inch away from them at all times and never charge because they'll always be charging me instead of counter-charging me, so 6s to hit, 6s to wound, they'll never do anything. This turn, on my last turn, on the Ratkin's last turn, I think they popped the Plague Pot, so the warriors in the center right now are -1 to be hit. They've got Ensnare and Stealthy, and then on the next turn they'll probably pop the Dragon Shard if they don't move. But yeah, there's no reason for me to charge them in the first place, so the Plague Pot's kind of wasted against me. So anyway, that's about it. I am going to go again for some weaknesses. I've got this weakness here. I could go for the warriors, but even 6s to 5, I'm not really worried about that. And then I have the weakness here to stop the drain. So I'll probably try to stop both the drains from the Broodmothers, but we'll see about that. And here is just a weird shot of the turn. You do get to see my opponent's cool models. My models are just random shit from my garage from back in my War Machine days. And this was also an army I painted in about 2 or 3 days. It was one of those, 1 week, go into a tournament, paint your list sort of things. So I like to recycle those if I can. And moving in, here is the end of turn shot. So starting on the right, we've got the Vampire Lord easily killing off the claw shots and turning to face. We have Morgoth getting another waiver onto the Vermintide here. That's great. It makes it so the warriors can't possibly charge into the flank here, which is good because the whites fail to kill off the other Vermintide, getting a waiver as well. But that's also great. It makes it so these Vermintide can't turn off my flight. In fact, nothing can because nothing's facing me that's not wavered. Then we have the Vermintide over here fighting my rates. They also get wavered. I put 5 damage onto them, but I think they are currently they're either a 10-12 or an 11-13, so getting a waiver is pretty good. And again, it's even better because they can't back up more. I mean, they have a small amount of room they can back up, even with their nimble, because they're not flyers. So they can back up a little bit. They can't clear the way for the Nightmares to charge into my rates. So my rates are going to be able to fly next turn as well. So it's kind of a mess for my opponent right now. And then over here, we have the Revenant King easily killing off a Shredder. Who would have guessed with 30 attacks on 3s and 2s? But, I managed it. So that is the end of Undead turn 3. Let's see what the Ratkin can do. So we've got the Ratkin turn 3. This one is definitely messy due to the amount of wavering on the previous turn and just some weird line of sight issues. So first off, we have this Rat Fiend. It was right here facing towards this board edge, and then it decided that if it turns, no matter how it turns, because I wavered all these units, it's either getting double flanked by the dragon, the vampire, and the whites, or it's going to get a rear on one of them, and any of that happening is probably a dead dead Rat Fiend. So it could have revealed its rear to the whites here and face towards my vampire. And then, no, actually, you know what? I think it could have given just the flank to the whites, who would have been hindered. So that's 36 attacks on 4s instead of 3s, but still my opponent decides to run off instead and just dodge all the line of sights, which is fair enough. And then we have with the Vermintide, all the Vermintide disengage. I don't know if you have to disengage to make it so you can shoot into the combat, but it's irrelevant anyway because my opponent wanted to disengage. So they can shoot at any of my units that they can see. And that's about it. Otherwise, we have some simple movements with stuff like the Broodmothers to make it so my dragon can't land. So like this Broodmother looks like it might be chargeable. It's not. I can't actually fit the 75 base between the Nightmares and the Vermintide. However, I do have the Nightmares do turn around. This is not a rear charge, facing towards my dragon. And then the Rat Fiend, after I killed off that war engine, that's what it's called, weapon engine. So this war engine, I wasn't too careful with my line of sights, and this Rat Fiend can in fact dodge my line of sight on this dragon, so it's just going to face towards the wraiths, try to get some work done, and that's about it. We've got the Nightmares here facing towards the dragon, just all the Nightmares facing towards flyers, facing away from the direction they want to be going, and that's a good thing for the Undead. But if they can nail some kills here on these dragons, again, it could quickly shift in their favor. So this is the end of turn shot for turn 3 here, and yeah, things do not go great for the Ratkin. They don't manage to take any units off the table this turn, which is super bad, and on top of it, they also don't manage any wounds on my vampire. They hit me with like 9... It's like 8 or 9 hits from these Nightmares onto my Vampire Lord, and then sink none of those wounds. So some pretty bad dice by my opponent. This Shredder could not see anything, so it just advances forward to be more chaff. This Shredder, I believe, shoots into my Horde, managing some... Or no, they probably shot into these whites, yeah, but that's what this wound dial is. So they shot into the whites, did some negligible damage. The whites cannot break from that, and otherwise nothing else happens. I mean, I think these Nightmares I know shoot into my Revenant King, and I'm guessing both the drains went in there too, but I don't think this guy goes above 8 wounds, or has not gone above 8 wounds yet this game, and certainly does not die from their efforts. So we'll move into turn 4. Things are looking a little rough for the Ratkin. So turn 4. First off with the Undead, this is just, things are getting a little messy. The Undead have not moved just yet, or, oh yeah, that's right. The other thing is that the Warriors, instead of popping their Dragon Shard Shield, this is probably the turn to drop it, decide to back up. And again, that might be to protect the Broodmothers, but the only thing they're protecting them from is the Wraiths, and the Wraiths can't see over these Warriors, so I don't see the point in backing them up. I would have just stayed still, popped the Dragon Shard. But anyway, here is the turn 4 charges for the Undead. First off, we've got the Vampire Lord charging into the front of these Nightmares. I'm not looking to kill them, but I am looking to heavily damage them and turn off their range attacks. Plus, I didn't have anything else to... Well, I could have flown... I think there was a spot maybe here, but there weren't a lot of spots to land where I'd be an inch away and my 75 mil base would fit. Again, those 50 mil bases, yearn for the days. But yeah, there's not a lot of landing spots, and I wanted to get some damage going, and if I lose my dragon right now, it's just not that big of a deal, because I'm dominating pretty hard in this game. So I can afford a risky maneuver. And speaking of that, I decided to take these whites and just leave them out of the game. I've got a 4 or 5 inch surge charge into the flank of this Rat Fiend, but I only have surge 6 available for that. Well, I guess I have Morgoth too, but Morgoth's not going to do that. So I only have Surge 6, so I'd need a pretty good roll, and even if I land it, I'll be hindered on that flank charge, and unlikely to one-shot a Rat Fiend with that. Or no, is that? No, that's not unlikely, because I hit with 18 hits on average, and then I sink like 13-ish wounds, and it's a dash 18. That's not a bad roll at all. But I don't need it to win, so instead I just put 1 surge on it. Because I'm going to try to drain some of these Vermintide out of the way. It's more important than it looks, because I need to make sure that my opponent has no unit strength and no ability to block this unit anymore. So that's what I'm going for. I just put these wraiths an inch away from the warriors. I do not care about charging, so I'll just stare at them. These wraiths go back into the Vermintide because they had little else to do. Again, a landing zone problem. I could have flown them around and gone for maybe a 2 or 3 inch flank charge onto the Rat Fiend by hitting its corner and having my leader point in its flank arc but my surge in this list isn't the best. I have a surge 6 here, and I would have had a surge 8 here, so I have a rear on this Vermintide, but either didn't see it at the time, didn't think it was relevant, or just didn't want to bother. So I don't go for that. I just go into the Vermintide because, again, the nightmares are not facing me, so who cares? My Revenant King goes into the rear of the Vermintide, and that's because my opponent's been focusing all their shooting onto that Revenant King so far, and I want to make sure it's as healthy as possible. So I want to use that life leech every turn on top of Morgoth slamming it with drain life every turn, because I used to run heal in this list, but I just found it wasn't all that necessary. It's still good, but I quickly outfly it. It's the same reason, like, I have Surge 8 on the Revenant King, but it's a real emergency measure. I don't think I've cast it yet in any of my test games, and I haven't cast it yet in this tournament, or in this tournament game, right? So I might drop that as well. 15 points is 15 points. So yeah, I'm going into the flank there, and then finally we have my horde of Revenants going into some Vermintide. I only wound them on 4s because I have the Hammer of Measured Force, which was a gamble of an item to bring. I don't think I will be bringing it in the future, but on this unit, I still think it's a good item. But here's how it all turns out. Here's how it all turns out. So starting on the left, we've got the Wraiths easily killing off the Vermintide. So that's pretty nice. We just staring down the table. Really, we're going to eat this Rat Fiend. We wanted to make sure it was in the front, and to make sure that if the Rat Fiend doesn't want to charge me for whatever reason, I will punish them by being able to get into the center field, get into the meat of the army some more. My Revenant King does manage to kill out the Vermintide, surprise, surprise. Doesn't get that double one. And on top of it, so I killed that Vermintide while Morgoth killed another Vermintide. I healed this guy down to 1 or 2 wounds. It's a pretty healthy dragon. It's going to be hard for my opponent to take it down. And on the opposite side of the table, this is the weird one. My dragon, my Vampire Lord, goes into the Nightmares. They do have Rally 1, only Rally 1 on them, but that does make them a 15-17, and I just one-shot them. So the dragon hits and wounds with like 9 attacks or some crazy amount. Morgoth is here to spread dread, and yeah, they're gone. So that's super unfortunate for the Ratkin. Just, it's feast or famine, I guess, here. And I do manage to fail this surge, so that's going for the Ratkin. I guess that's good. But even this 5s and 4s combat against those wounded Vermintide, yeah, they're gone. And I'm free to face towards the table with my horde as well. So things are not looking great, but let's see what the Ratkin can pull away. So trying to get max points for them. I'm not sure they can win the game yet. Although at this point, no one's winning because we're tied. No one has an objective point because we've revealed them now because it's turn 4, and this is the one I'm closest to. Oh no, I definitely, there's a 2-pointer down here that the zombies are on, so I guess I'm winning. But and I did get some weaknesses. I decided to weakness these Nightmares because they're obviously going to go after my Revenant King, and then I went for a weakness onto... Oh, no, I went for the Surge here, right. So that's my only weakness, and let's see what the Rat can get. So Ratkin turn 4, we see the Rat Fiend deciding to go into my Wraiths with a front charge. I don't think that's likely to succeed, but I just one-shot those Nightmares, so maybe it'll work. Then we have the weakened Nightmares going into the front of my Revenant King with some claw shots going into the flank. I'll admit I goaded my opponent into taking this flank charge, but it might hurt me. I can't imagine what else it does besides flank charging me to you know, get 1 or 2 damage maybe and kill off my Revenant King. My opponent decides to not charge with either of the Brood Mothers, and I'm not sure if that's smart or... I think it's smart, because you don't want to make it so the Revenant King, if it doesn't die, can just countercharge into a Brood Mother, because they're much more valuable at this point than the Nightmares are, in my opinion. And they're much more able to be killed, right? So I'm probably not going to one-shot another horde of Nightmares, especially this one at 16-18. So yeah, it's okay. And they decide to just stand here to drain to make sure this guy dies. The Flyers have to go if my opponent's going to get any points out of this game. So we have the Warriors again, just engaging in a staring fight with my Wraiths. I think they actually went for the charge this time. No, they didn't go for the charge. And I don't think they popped the Dragon Shard either, which is very strange. Although if they'd popped the Dragon Shard, I do have the Hammer of Measured Force, so I always wound on force. But yeah, I think my opponent might have forgotten about it, maybe. And then we have the Rat Fiend here facing off against my Whites, just getting ready to take their charge. Again, it will be hindered unless I want to leave the woods, like, you know, fly off. But I don't think it's possible for me to pivot, fly, and get a charge here that's unhindered, because I am not nimble. So I'm just going to have to take that hindered charge instead. And then we have both of the claw shots here, or not claw shots, shredders deciding to block the flank for the Warriors because it's my opponent's most important unit. So that's fair enough. And then the way the Warriors are planted and these claw shots, there's no landing spot for my vampire on dragon. So again, getting a little messed over by those 75 bases, but good use of movement, or good use of space by my opponent. And here is just a better shot at the table. I kind of like this one, even though it's showing off a kind of horrific game. I like the look of it. And we move into turn 5, I guess. So let's just talk about what happened in turn 4. First off, the Mutant Rat Fiend here did manage some wounds onto my Wraiths, so they are grounded, but did not manage to kill them. These Warriors managed 0 wounds on my Wraiths, even if they did charge. I'm not sure they did. I think they just stared at me. And then there was no more shooting by my opponent, except for this one unit of claw shots, which shot into something. I don't remember exactly what, but did not manage anything. And then we have the big old dragon there. Yeah, it just tanks both these units, the claw shots and the nightmares, right into its front and side. It's at 8 wounds because my opponent rolls abysmally, but I was, you know, I did have weakness on them. And then this is a unit of claw shots. I think they hit on 5s with their 5 attacks. Yeah, so 10 attacks on 5s and then 5s, not the best. The big disappointment was the Drain Life, which didn't manage to do much. But yeah, I'm at 8 wounds, I guess. That's fine. And then we move into turn 5 for the Undead. You can see I do take my my horde of Revenants and go into one of the War Engines. I am hindered, so it's 5s and 4s, but it is 75 attacks, so that's probably just going to be a double 1 there. Then I have my Whites going into the front of the Rat Fiend. I'm hindered as well there, but again, not too worried about it because, well, I am slightly worried, I should say. This is not my inspiring necromancers, so these guys are not inspired this game. But I do have a weakness, and again, they're only crush 2, so it'll be, you know, 10 attacks on 3s and 4s. So hopefully I can tank that. And we've got Mortimerus just being kind of a dick, flying into this little spot here to spam out some Drain Life. Again, trying to heal my dragon up. It's within 6 inches, or my Revenant King, not the dragon. The dragon has not taken a wound yet. But yeah, the big thing happens here where I disengage 1 inch with my Wraiths here from the Rat Fiend, and when I disengage 1, it makes it so I now can draw a line of sight to the Warriors, and I'm definitely in its flank, and then I can just pivot and get that corkscrew charge in, because a disengage 1 corkscrew is in the game, and ooh, it's a doozy. So I finally charge into the Warriors. I do have these ones in the flank and these Wraiths in the front. If I don't kill them, it's even weirder, because it might look like the Mutant Rat Fiend has a charge here, but they don't. I don't believe they can. No, there's no way they can't see me. They've got to be able to see me. So they'll have a charge there into the rear of the Wraiths. If I lose the Wraiths, again, I just don't think it matters, because this game is such a steamroll at this point due to some poor dice. But Anyway, I send the Revenant King into the front of the Nightmares, hoping to one-shot them, just like his big brother over here. And speaking of that Vampire Lord, I go into the rear of some claw shots, just, yeah, show them what's what. And then the zombies just sort of meander about in the back. These ones are sitting on a 2-point objective. There is 1 unit of... claw shots. I can see them, but it's going to be very difficult for the claw shots to do anything because they've got 5 shots on 5s now and then 2s, and then I'm a dash 15. I do have the inspiring necromancer right here, so if if they land a lucky turn, they'd still, like, even with all 5 hits and 5 wounds, it's still a 10 to kill me. So if they land that, I can run over here real quick and give them the inspire. But instead, I've moved forward to be more helpful and also to start casting Surge onto this zombie unit so I can drag it over to this 1-point objective, because we are playing Northern King, so I want to have as many objective points at the end of the game as I can. So that's that. Let's see how it all goes. Yeah, look at Mortibrus here, just being a Mortibrus asshole. And here's the end of the turn. So on the right, yeah, my whites just one-shot that A-bomb, because of course they do. Dash 18, that ain't nothing. So we kill that off. I do one-shot the war engine, so that's not really surprising. I don't kill the warriors. I get them up to a fair number of wounds, but they are still ready to rock. I've got my Vampire Lord one-shot the rear charge onto the claw shots, and yeah, unfortunately the Revenant King could not one-shot the Nightmares, even though did Mortibrus? I think Mortibrus actually cast Drain Life onto the warriors because, again, I was going for some heal. So yeah, either that or I cast it onto a war engine, which is def 5. But anyway, this dragon's back down to like 4 or 5 wounds at this point because I don't really get a very good Drain Life that turn. But things are looking positively abysmal, although there's still points to be had because these whites could very easily die to this rear charge, and so could this Revenant King because it's still wounded. But I think the game is probably out of my opponent's grasp at this point. So let's go into turn 5 for the Ratkin. They do get the rear charge with the Mutant Rat Fiend. Okay, good. I'm glad I wasn't completely insane there and thinking that they couldn't. I think that's a different game. But yeah, they've got this rear charge into the Wraiths along with the Nightmares here, hoping to finish off this Revenant King that they have been fighting, or the Ratkin have been fighting literally the entire game. So let's see if they've got it. Both of the both of the Broodmothers just get around to get some Drain Lives going to heal up these Nightmares and to get the Revenant King out of here, and maybe even heal up the warriors, although they are fairly damaged and they're looking at some pretty nasty charges the next turn, right? Like that's a rear from a Vampire Lord, for example. So we'll see about that with the roll. So the claw shots that are over here have been shooting at the zombies, just trying to get some damage on them, but they haven't landed a hit yet, and they only have 1 more turn. I wonder if it would have been better, or it would have behooved my opponent more, because there is a 1-point objective somewhere off here that I cannot mess with the claw shots on, unless Mortibrus wants to go for a cheeky Mind Fog last turn. But I wonder if it would have behooved my opponent just to run at that to try to get the 1 point. I will admit I didn't read the rules packet before playing this game. Otherwise, I probably would have suggested it because in Northern Kings, it's not the difference. It's not like Blackjack where, if I have 5 points and you have 2 points, you make my win worse. It's for every point you have, you make your win or loss better. You don't negatively impact your opponent at all to get those extra points. So I might have suggested it, but I hadn't read the rule pack yet, so one of those guys. I actually didn't even know this was a 1-day event until I showed up at the tournament, so I'm ace, guys. I'm in it. Life's been a little hectic. Yeah, so with the Ratkin, we've got the Nightmares going in here. The Warriors decide to, I already said that. So the Warriors do not manage to kill off my Wraiths. Who would have guessed? They do pop the Dragon Shard Shield this turn, so that's good. The Rat Fiend does manage to one-round those Wraiths in the rear. That's not that weird. Although I do think my opponent might have been thinking that the Mutant Rat Fiend had Thunderous Charge 1 on top of the Crushing 2, because I have a vivid memory of them rolling for 3s to wound, and I'm pretty sure they only have Crushing 2. But if I'm wrong, feel free to leave a comment. You always do. So yeah, I don't think that matters too much. It's still 30 attacks on 3s and then 4s or 3s, so like 10 wounds on average. So it's an okay roll, but whatever. Otherwise, my opponent does not manage to do anything. This Revenant King will not die. It's still standing, and I've only lost those rates this turn, so things are looking a little messy. We go into turn 6. So turn 6, first off, things are getting, well, my clock is running low, so we're gonna have to see stuff like this. This is my Vampire Lord charging into the front of the Rat Fiend. I manage 8 wounds. I also cast Weakness onto it, which is marked by my weakness marker, and I double one it. My opponent insisted that I take my weird double one picture, even though it's only at 8 wounds, and it's currently I think it's a dash 19 because of the nightmares there. So funny, but not super relevant. The rest of my charges go okay. I do end up I take these rates into so the rates that were right here, I can get into this flank charge because I can fly over to this. I can orient right on this little edge here. This edge was blocked by my own Vampire Lord, but instead I can go over there. So I've got a flank on the Nightmares and a front on the Nightmares. And unfortunately, I actually flubbed the dice there. But it's, it's about time, I guess. It's just not hyper relevant, but I did not roll very well on that charge because obviously rates have 36 attacks on 4s and then 4s, and then I have 10 attacks on 3s and 2s, and I just don't manage enough to land that kill on a 15-17 unit. But just shows off Nightmares are pretty hardy, especially if they are being healed up by that drain life from the Broodmother, so well worth checking out. I decide to not move the whites here at all, or I advance a little bit to get into the woods and be within 3 of this 1-pointer, because again, that's all that really matters. These zombies move forward and then are surged towards this 1-pointer here. I go for a flank charge onto the warriors with my Revenants, manage it, and they are gone. So at the end of Undead turn 6, the only things left are the 2 Broodmothers, 1 of the Rat Fiends, 1 Shredder, the Nightmares, and 1 of the Claw Shots all the way over here. Good line there. So we'll see what turn 6 for the Ratkin looks like. So turn 6 Ratkin, I don't even get a great picture here, but first off, we've got the Rat Fiend charging into my Vampire Lord. They manage, that's either 3 or 8 wounds. I'm pretty sure it's only 3 wounds, so they at least disordered it. That's good. We have 1 of the Broodmothers taking a flank charge onto my rates. It's pretty solid because Broodmothers hit on 4s. They have 5 attacks and crushing 1, I believe. So, it's 10 attacks on 4s and then 5s. It's not the best, but if they land that wound, it makes it so I can't fly, which might be relevant if the Nightmares manage to kill off the Revenant King this turn, which would be a big important bit. Mortibrus did drain onto the did I drain the night? I drained the Mutant Rat Fiend. So I got to 8 wounds with the Vampire Lord with Mortibrus's help, but Mortibrus did not help that much. So the Nightmares go back into the Revenant King. This time they're not weakness, so they're on 4s and 4s, and they have a drain life to help them out, but they still can't kill it, so it's still alive. I've only lost these stupid rates. They've been fighting this Revenant King the whole game. What a pick, what a killer. And then the Shredder here has no minimum range, so it can just shoot right into my horde, and it manages like 2 or 3 wounds. It's pretty whatever. And we end up rolling up to see if there's a turn 7. So here we go. This is the end of turn 6 for the Ratkin. You can see how the combats go. Obviously, I was disordered here. They don't kill this. They don't kill the rates. And they do 2 wounds. Yep. So here we go. Boom. There is a turn 7, because of course there is. When things are going wrong, they gotta go turn 7. So turn 7, we get a blurry picture. First off, my zombies here just take the 1-pointer. My dragon ends up killing the Rat Fiend along with Morgoth's help. So they get him really high up. And then I get another charge off with my Wraiths and Revenant King onto the Nightmares. I pick them up, and I get a flank charge onto this Broodmother. I don't pick that up, so it's still alive at the end of the game, but we roll into my opponent's turn, and yeah, this is actually the end of turn shot since I didn't take one during my opponent. But they don't manage to kill anything. The Revenant King that could continues living on the table, and at the end of the game, I have a 2-pointer here, a 1-pointer here for 3, a 1-pointer here for 4. So I have 4 points, while my opponent, here are the 2 ones because this unit of Claw Shots is still alive, so it could have spent the last 2 turns running at one of these 1-pointers instead, and chose not to. But yeah, so I end up with 4 points, which gives me a decent bump there. My opponent did get 1 point for killing because they killed 1 unit of whites with that lucky nerve check, and then they got that that rear charge onto some wraiths, which was less luck and more whoopsies. So yeah, they end up getting +1 point there, following the, I think it's plus 400 or over a 400, something like that, points, you get +1. So a 6-point victory there, and or a 6-point loss, while I nail a 22-point victory, I want to say it was. So pretty good for me, less good for my opponent, but otherwise an interesting game showing off the Ratkin. With that said, we'll move into game 2. So game 2, I'm playing against Basilia. So we've got, and by the way, it is Basilia. Basilia is a real place, guys. It's in Switzerland. It's not Basilia, but anyway. So we've got Basilia, which opens with 3 hordes of men-at-arms spearmen. Then we have a regiment, or 2 regiments of Sisterhood scouts, one of whom has the scrying gem. That is an ace item, by the way. Then we have a regiment of paladin knights with the brew of sharpness, a horde of paladin knights with the brew of strength, a heavy arbalist, and then Daenor the wizard, Julius, Dragon of Heaven, and Samachris, Mother of Phoenixes. So it's a very elite Basilian list, but I do think it's pretty good. I'm a big fan. I know this person is a rather new player. They've been, they got into historicals for a couple of months, I want to say, at the end of version 2, and this is their first version 3 sort of like normal fantasy list. But I like it. I think the Men-at-Arms Spearmen are strong. I really enjoy them. I think the Sisterhood Scouts have something to offer. I think the Scrying Gem at 25 points is... Oof, I always feel bad when I don't have it in my list. It's just so good. And then the Paladin Knights, this is the only thing that I look at and I go, I'm not really into the Cav regiments in this edition. I think they're a little too expensive for what they do. The Paladin Knights are pretty well costed though, at 210 points for def 5 and 15, 17, and 16 attacks, I think, 16 or 18. With that Thunder 2, and of course having Iron Resolve. They're a really good unit at that 210 point bracket, but the Phalanx rule has been ruled incorrectly, right? To say that even on the counter charge, you're -1 to hit if you're Cav unit. So I don't know. I do think that's that like, oh, you'll either have Phalanx or you won't, and they'll be good or they won't. But I don't think they're good enough even without the Phalanx to really be an auto into a list. Now the Horde I do think is very good. Very hard to get rid of. It's like a 23, 25 or some ridiculous nerve. It has 36 attacks. Just a strong unit. Brew of Strength is okay there, but I'd probably just go with Caterpillar personally to save points. The Heavy Arbalist, it's okay. It's gets a special mention because of the 2 regiments of Sisterhood Scouts to go with it, and Daenor. So yeah, maybe it works. And then speaking of Daenor, I don't think he's worth it, but my opponent has been apparently putting in really good work in their game, so maybe it's just a style thing. And with that, let's move into the scenario. So as I said before, we're going to play both of the bluff counter scenarios, and the second one here is Smoke and Mirrors. So you set it up the same as the first one. You place 5 bluff tokens as objectives, so more than 12 away, more than 3 from impassable, so on and so forth. And then on your opponent's side of the board, while they place them on yours, you rinse and repeat until all 10 are out. But in this one, you get to flip a counter on your opponent's side of on your side of the table every turn. Although you have to roll off to decide who flips first. Why the fuck do you roll? Like, it's like, I get it, it's whatever. This is a clock game. Just make it so first player chooses, or make it so you rolled once for priority. I don't care. Just don't roll every turn. It's dumb. Or at least, like, don't do a roll off. Just roll a die and be like, odd, it's player 2, even it's player 1. Anything but this. Anyway, mini rant over. But you score the same way as the previous scenario, so bluff counters that are worth 0, or that say 0 worth 0, 1 is worth 1, 2 is worth 2. So it's a pretty simple one, but I really do enjoy this scenario a lot. I like flipping things as they go. I like increased player agency during the game. I think one of Kings of War's biggest weaknesses is that you score almost every scenario at the end of the game, right? So it's why it makes that turn 7 sort of a feel bad, or a negative play experience, and it's because it rips the agency from you as a player. If there were more things that that you interacted with during the actual game, I think that would be alleviated somewhat. And this is a good example of a scenario that does that, or at least an okay one. And with that, let's talk about the table. So on the right side, first off, we have a giant height 3 hill. Right above that, we have a height 2 obstacle. To the left of that obstacle, we have a height 8 forest. To the left of that, we have a height 4 impassable. To the left of that, we have another height 3 hill. Below that, a height 4 obstacle with a height 2, or no, a height 4 impassable with a height 2 obstacle attached to it. And then finally, we have a big ol' height 1 piece of difficult terrain. There might be some stuff that's hidden from this point of view, but it's a pretty standard table with things just deployed down lines. I'm not a huge fan of that, but you know, we were a little late getting started in this event, so terrain is what terrain is. Speaking of that, let's talk about the bluff counters. So as I said before, we each received 10 of these. So my opponent just got to put out their 10, which is identical to my 10, but it makes it really nice because you're never going like, oh, is this your counter? Is it mine? No, all the bluff counters are yours, or they're your opponent's, right? If you have 10. So really nice that way. First off, we have 1, 2, 3. I'm not sure where the other 2 my opponent planted are, but then mine are 1, 2, 3, 4, and then of course one of mine is somewhere off here. Off screen a little bit. So those are the counters. In this game, I did look at them before I placed them, or at least I looked at the 2-pointer, but I do remember, if you play card games, you know, like nervous shuffling, right? Where you just sit there and you shuffle cards in your hands because you're thinking. I do that with tokens a lot too, and so I looked at my tokens, planned them out, and then I started shuffling them. So these ones end up random as well, but not on purpose. Yikes, bit of a mistake there, but I'll get over it. Oh, let's talk about let's talk about the armies. So first off, on the left with the Basilian army, we have the Sisterhood. Then right here is Julius, I think that's an Age of Sigmar model, but I know at least one of the people at the tournament was a little upset that they saw this model and they went, well, how am I supposed to know it flies? And that's an okay point. I knew it flew immediately, right? Because you see a 40 mil square in a Basilian army, and I'm like, oh, some sort of a low here or something. So, yeah, I could see that in the future, maybe trying to denote this a little bit better, that it's a flyer. But, I mean, look at my army, so I'm not going to make fun of anyone for that. So we've got Julius right there. Then we have the first horde of spearmen. Then to the right of that, we have the second horde of spearmen with Daenor right behind them. Then behind that, we have the Samacris, the Phoenix. To the right of her is the third horde of spearmen. In the woods is the second regiment of Sisterhood. Then we have the horde of Paladin Knights next to the regiment of Paladin Knights. The regiment, of course, is the Brew of Sharpness, and the horde is the Brew of Strength. So, yeah, pretty good deployment by my opponent. It's a small army in terms of drops, but it covers the table pretty well. So I'm really happy with this. I'm actually really eager to check out some Kingdoms of Men armies in the future, just because I think it's a really strong faction, and it looks a little like this, I think. So with that out of the way, let's talk about the Undead. So first off, on the right, we have the first regiment of zombies. The second regiment of zombies is also over here, I believe, but I'm not entirely sure. Then we have the first horde of whites. This is the one that has +1 speed. Then we have the first regiment of wraiths. Then we have the second horde of whites with the Blade of Slashing, and I will just mention it here. This entire tournament, I forget about Blade of Slashing, so I didn't roll it the whole time. I forgot I even took the item. I should have just brought the Scrying Gem. But anyway. Then we have the second regiment of wraiths. We have the Vampire Lord with the Chalice of Wrath. Yeah, Wrath. Then we have the Horde of Revenants with the Undead Rats and Hammer of Measured Force. We have the Inspiring Wizard right here. And then, not appearing in this film, is Morgoth is right here. I think the other Necromancer is over here somewhere. And then the Revenant on Undead Worm is over here. So they're, you know, out of frame a little bit, but it's a tournament, so you don't always get the pictures you want. You just get the pictures you get. So let's go into turn one. Turn one ends up going to, is this? Oh, yeah. I was like, what happened here? And it's just because of that scout move. Turn 1 goes to Basilia. You can now see my Revenant over here is, in fact, where it is. And then Morgoth is over here hiding behind a corner. But anyway, the battle line for the Basilian army just advances forward. As I said before, this is a bit of a new player. And I think at this point in the game, or maybe on turn 2, I asked them a question. And I was like, do you want me to aid you at all, or like, how do you want me to handle comments? Because it can be upsetting or frustrating if you're new, especially, or just in general if someone is going, well, you shouldn't do that all the time, because it's not super helpful, even if you're just trying to help, right? In a game you're losing, like, it just builds bad feelings. So I like to ask any player that's, especially when they're new, or if they're inexperienced, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be new, but if I notice a mistake you're making, how do you want me to handle that? Do you want me to tell you? Do you want me to keep it to myself? What do you want? And this opponent went with, I would like you to tell me, but wait until I finish my movement, so there's no takebacks, right? And I was like, okay, I'll play the same way, right? So I won't do any takebacks, but if I make a mistake, of course, just tell me. So it was a very interesting game in that way. So with that said, all the units just sort of advance forward. We've got Julius getting onto the hill, always good for a flyer, with these very large hills. And then we have really nothing else happening. This Arbalist, place where it is, I'm not sure why my opponent didn't just tow the leader point into this forest, right? If it was there, it would see almost the entire table, right? It'd be such a good vantage point. But since they didn't put the leader point into the forest, this is the first mistake of the game, which is it's going to be blocked from seeing, the whole right side of the table. So, anyway. We've got the sister archers, and I believe just these ones have some pretty good line of sight onto my Revenants, because they're on the hill, and it's only a height 2 barrier, so they're currently height 5, so they are tall enough to actually see past the barrier and not give me cover. So a bit of a mistake by me there, but otherwise we'll see. But they might end up shooting at the dragon, which won't have cover anyway, so we'll see. Here is the end of the turn. They do end up shooting into my Revenant Horde. They do 1 damage, which is pretty bad, but I guess it's better than nothing. And then the other sisters end up shooting into one of my units of Wraiths. And even with, so I don't have cover, and they didn't move, so they're 4 is the hit. But I am defense 6, right? Still manage a wound onto me. Or 2, so that's less than I wanted, because I'm not the greatest healer in this army, but we'll see about it. Oh, there's and then speak of the devil, speak of my healer, Mortibrus, right down here in this way low left, hiding behind a building. So anyway, moving into turn 1, Undead. So turn 1, Undead. Mortibrus's base is visible right here, and just running out of line of sight of the archers, and of course of Julius. Do not want that. And just going to start draining on the archers. They do have Iron Resolve, and they have pretty decent nerve, and they're currently inspired, so I don't expect a whole lot, but I'm going to just get the ball rolling onto them, since they are a squishy troop. I then fly my Revenant King over here. I'm out of charge range of the archers and of course of the spearmen, but not of Julius. Julius can do whatever they want, in my opinion, because again, it's one of those things where you go, I will give you a charge with a unit, just not with 8 units, right? My Vampire Lord does similarly, where I made sure that Julius is in my front because he does have like 8 attacks or some crazy number. And I'm just going to make sure that it's a front charge if this dude's going into me. But otherwise, I don't really care too much with the dragon. I'm out of charge range of the spearmen. Of course, Samacris could charge me. I'm not sure why she would, but she can. And there's quite a bit of shooting that can fire at me. I'm out of line of sight of these sister archers, so that's good. Or out of the line of the arc, right? They can see me with their line of sight, but I'm out of their arc for shooting. And then I'm gonna eat Danor and the Arbalist and probably these sisters because I'm unlikely to kill them. And so I'm a little worried about whenever I put a vampire in that position, just because double ones do, or boxcars do happen, and spikes happen, and it's never good. Never good for me, so I don't want it to happen. Otherwise, in the middle, I advance my units into this height 1 terrain to make sure I have cover, so I put more than 50% of my unit into it, and all of these are flyers, so they don't really care about it charging out, but now they'll have cover against the... I don't think the Arbalist ignores cover, but I'm not exactly sure, and the Sisterhood definitely don't, so... and nor does Danor. So that's the plan there. And then I decide to not get onto the hill with any of these units. So my leader point is just off the hill here. But I do get onto the hill with my Necromancer. And that's because I want to cast a... Oh, no, I'm sorry. I do get onto the hill. My leader point is on the hill with these guys because I'm just out of charge range of the knight units. And then I also advance forward with my Necromancer to get a weakness off right now because I want to cast weakness onto the Sisterhood. So I put my leader point onto the hill so I can see over it. I might even be 50% on the hill, who knows. But I can now shoot into them with a weakness, and they can shoot back at that Necro, but it's not too many attacks, and again, because the Arbalist is not in the woods, I'm pretty well protected. It's only going to be the Sisterhood or maybe Danor at best that my opponent can throw into me. So with that said, let's see how it all goes. The only real attack I have is with Mortibris, who does like 6 wounds to the sisters, but granted, it is 9 attacks on 4s, 9 wound on 2s due to my Pierce 1. But yeah, that's pretty good. I do not manage to get a waiver, so they do heal 1 back. So I believe they're at 5 right now, either at 4 or 5. 4 or 5 wounds back or there, so that's solid. I do land a weakness onto Julius in case they want to charge, because I believe Julius is crush 3, so putting them down to crush 2 is relevant. And then I do land I actually fail my second weakness, the one from the, looks like, because I did fire it at the Sisterhood here, and I don't see a token out, so I think no, I definitely didn't fail that one, it's just hidden somewhere. So I get a weakness there as well, and that'll be it for my shooting, and we move into turn 2. So turn 2 for Basilia. Now I'm doing it. So first off, we got the Sisterhood. They decide to back up so they can shoot at Mortibris. I'm not so sure about that. I'm not sure how that matters. Well, because they're not out of charge range of my Revenant King over here. They're not protecting the flank of the Spearmen. This is another mistake, I think. I think they should be flush with the Spearmen, protecting their flank, right? And then just accept that Mortibris is going to shoot at them, because if they shoot at Mortibris, they do have steady aim, right? So they can move and shoot without penalty. But shooting at Mortibris is a waste of time. Mortibris is individual, so -1. It's a 14-16 with a regen 5+ and defense 5, and then drain life to heal itself. So unless you get a lucky waiver or kill, and it's going to be real lucky to get that with just Sisterhood. So I think that's a minor mistake by my opponent. The Spearmen here advance forward, staying out of charge range of my Ghosts, I do believe, but not out of charge range of my Flyers. And Julius here gets a cheeky charge that I didn't quite see coming into it. So Julius was originally over here on the hill, right? So they're definitely in the flank of these Wraiths. And then on top of it, the line of sight, they can't see the flank, but they can definitely see this corner of the unit past my dragon, because Julius can't see over the dragon. The dragon's height 6. Julius was only height 5 at that time, or height 6 at the time. But they can see part of the unit. They are in the flank, well within charge range, and by well within, I mean it's like 19.5 inches. But get that flank off. So I'm really happy I went for that, or that I actually landed that weakness onto Julius, because a flank charge from him onto the Wraiths at full power is not what I want to see. Their def 6 is their major sell point, and it's I believe he is like 8 attacks or something like that. So it's like 16 attacks on 3s and 3s. No thanks. But 16 attacks on 3s and 4s, meh, that's, you know, I'll probably hold that down. And if I hold that down, things are not going to go great for Julius. And otherwise, we have these units in the woods are just advancing. Oh, there's the weakness token. Weakness is definitely on the archers, though. They advance forward a little bit. I think these spearmen are a little misplaced because they're going to have to trudge through the woods basically the whole game, as I am a little faster than my opponent. Well, not really faster, but I'm more aggressive than my opponent, I guess. Like me as a player. So yeah, they're gonna have to advance through that forest, and I can just avoid it. And again, I have these Strider units, so I don't really care. Yeah, it might be a little hard for my opponent to get through, but they are a phalanx unit, so almost my entire army is -1 to hit them in the front. So at least that's good. And on top of this, we've got this. I think this is when I ask my opponent whether they want me to point out mistakes or not, because this horde of Cav advance forward and do not put their leader point onto the hill. And they're not 50% on the hill, so they can't actually see over it. So if I want to just dodge them, I can. Right? If I want to just not fight this unit, I can just stay behind the hill, right? I don't have to fight them. So minor mistake by my opponent there, but it might be major in the long run because again, I can just back up a little bit and this part of the unit can see me, but that's not how line of sight works. You have to measure from the leader point, draw a line. So I can hide from their line of sight a little bit and then engage this regiment or just only engage the regiment. And I think I can probably take their charge with anything that's not zombies. Zombies will get wrecked. That is a Brew of Sharpness unit of Paladinites. Zombies will not do well there. But yeah, the Wraiths took 2 wounds from those from the sister archers. So, yeesh. And let's see how it all ends up going with my opponent's shooting and such. So yeah, here's this random charge. I did not see that coming. And here's the end of the turn. So with my opponent shooting, first off, these whites are a pretty good target for the Arbalest to fire into along with Daenor. Puts me at 2 wounds there, but no kill, obviously. Otherwise, there's no shooting damage that goes down, and no Morgoth does not take any wounds. And then on this flank charge, my opponent only manages 3 wounds, which is very good because that's not even a roll, right? They can't even boxcar their way out of it. So I'm down with that because I do not believe Julius has brutal. Although if they do have brutal, it's a boxcar, and my opponent didn't roll it. And with that, let's move forward. Oh no, he's got Dread. That's right. So it was a boxcar. Yeah. So yeah, did not get that. Good thing though. And we move into turn 2 for the Undead. So first off, let's just cut to the chase here. I charged Julius in the rear here with my horde of Revenants with Hammer of Measured Force because Julius is def 6, but I wound on 4s, right? I end up doing 17 wounds to Julius, and I double won it. So that's unfortunate, but I'm not really in danger right now because there are no units that can charge me, even though I got this double one here because I sent some units to block as well. So it's unfortunate, but not the end of the world. Still funny. Over here, I get another double one because my Vampire Lord had a flank charge onto the Sisterhood, takes it and hits a double one. So 2 double ones in a round. I guess I'm supposed to be able to win the game. It's all my planning that's at fault here, right? That's what happened there, guys. Anyway, and the rest of the table looks pretty good though. So we've got my Revenant here decided to flank charge into the Spearman. I forgot to take a picture of it, but I flank charge into the Spearman here, and then I had a front charge, I guess, with the Wraiths. So yeah, so I went in for that. The Wraiths are -1 to hit, so only on 5s, but they're pretty much just there to block the Spearman from being able to engage any of my units over here. So we went for that. We did manage to kill them off, so that's a big kill. Morgoth just flew into the back here, drained onto the Sisterhood archers, and killed them off, so they're gone. And then I double won Julius, I double won the Sisterhood, and then got a charge off with my Wraiths here into the front of the Night Horde, making that bit of a snafu with their placement irrelevant because I just charged them anyway. I gave them weakness to turn off their Crush 1, so they'll be wounding me on 6s, and then took my Whites here and charged into the Paladin regiment there. I do insanely well. I do like 16 wounds, and I have brutal, so I just one-shot them as well. Things are looking a little dicey for my opponent. You can see some of the tokens are starting to pop up. So there's the 2-pointer for my opponent. There's a 0 that I put down, and there's some other ones. I mean, we have 4 revealed at this point. Just don't know what they must be over here. So yeah. Things are not looking great for my opponent, but those 2 double ones might end up costing me big here because, Julius has a rear charge onto these Whites because I was like, how is Julius going to live through a rear charge from these? And the answer is double ones, of course. And because Devastated is such a well-written rule, you know, I don't like to harp too much on RC and stuff like that for these new rules. I do think Devastated is a bit of a milquetoast rule, but on top of it, it's not written super well, in my opinion, just because you can heal your way out of it. And this will probably be a good example of that, because I think Julius is like maybe 1 or 2 wounds above their breakpoint, and Samacris is back here with, you know, Radiance of Life and heal. So just heal it up, right? Or heal it 1 past it, and then you're not devastated. All you had to do is say devastated is a state that's checked for at the end of each player turn, right? That way, when I devastate you on my turn, you're devastated till the end of your turn, and so on and so forth. And I think that would be a rather nice change to the rule, because right now, regenning your way out of it or healing your way out of it is a little much. But anyway, moving forward on to turn 3. So turn 3, Julius does get a rear charge onto these whites who have 8 damage on them. Or no, I'm sorry. They end up with 8 damage because Julius, this is a hindered charge into their rear. So puts them up to 8, gets the disorder, but does not manage to kill them, which is very lucky for me. Moving forward with the rest of the turn, you can see, yeah, Samacris just flew over here, hiding from my line of sight from the dragons and the wraiths, and went for the heal on Julius, getting it. We have the spearmen here who are a little out of position. You can actually see the 0 that's up on that hill, so there's another revealed token. These guys could not see my dragon and just come down the hill a little bit to stare into its flank. Hopefully I'm not there anymore, otherwise I'm making a mistake. And then we have the knights here getting a charge into my wraiths. They were disordered, so yeah, I managed a wound or 2 onto them with my wraiths before, so they're going to be hitting me on 3s and wounding me on 6s with that weakness on them, so I'm not expecting too much. And in fact, that is what happens, because they do like, I don't know, 4-ish wounds to me, getting the disordered, but not the kill. So that's fine for there, and let's see how turn 3 for the Undead goes, because there's not a whole lot else to talk about with, well, I guess Daenor here does a fair number of wounds onto my wraiths and gets a wind blast, I think, onto my my Revenant here. But so all the spells do go off. Oh, and then here was the thing. The Spearmen here had a charge onto my dragon because I double one again. Well, they would have had a charge anyway. But because I charged in for that double one on the Sisterhood, the Spearmen now have a charge onto the front of my dragon. But they're hindered due to the woods, so my Daenor goes for the Bane Chant and gets that off, so at least they'll be +1 to wound, and they do disorder it. They do not waver it, so, and the dragon has Fury, so it can charge, you know, wherever it can next turn. And here we go with turn 3. So again, we don't have a lot of setup pictures. We just have pictures of hot double ones. So I have a flank charge with the whites here. I have a front charge with the whites here and a front charge with the wraiths here. I get these knights up to like 28, 29 wounds, an insane number of wounds. And I double one it. So that is unfortunate. I do end up healing this point off due to life leech, but I had to take a picture of that double one first. All these little matchbooks in the back are my opponents. I guess they're not matchbooks. They're probably, what's it called? Flames of War or Bolt Action, one of those games. So just marking damage in the back there. But yeah, take that. You're devastated though. And I guess turn 4, hopefully let's get a better picture. Okay, so let's talk about turn 3 a little bit, or Undead turn 3, because I didn't take any good pictures. First off, I have my Revenant King on Drake fly over here and charge into the flank or into the front of the Sisterhood. It's either the front or the flank. I kill them off, which is great. My dragon just decides to countercharge, to countercharge into the Phalanx unit. So I am 4s to hit, but I need to start rolling that damage up, while I also have Morgoth fly over here. Morgoth goes for a drain life on Daenor. Doesn't roll super well, but then totally bonks that nerve check. So my vampire's at full wounds right now, but Daenor's still up and ready. These wraiths actually had been turned, and then I had moved my necromancer forward and cast Surge to charge into the flank of Samacris, and I just flubbed those dice as well. But I mean, they're 4+ to hit units. It's sort of what happens. And that opens up a rear charge by these spearmen. So yikes there. I do manage to kill off Julius, though. I don't double one it again, so at least there's that on 5s and 4s. Both my zombies are just starting to move forward because there is a 2-pointer here. I don't know what this is, but it's probably a 0 at this point. So yeah, that is the turn 3 undead experience. So let's talk about turn 4 now. Excuse me. Turn 4 for the Basilians. So we have this devastated unit. Samacris just flies over here to give them Radiance of Life. I think my opponent originally tried to heal, but I reminded them they can't heal. But at least they're out of line of sight for any of my units to charge, except for the Wraiths, who are getting reared right now, so probably not the best there. The Knights decide to charge into my Whites here that are on 7 wounds after that double one. So they might be able to. I mean, they're not weaknessed right now. So that'll be, what, 36 attacks on, or not 36 attacks, but 18 attacks on 3s and 4s. That's pretty good odds. And here is the end of turn. So yeah, they do manage to kill off those Whites, which is unfortunate for me. My Wraiths get killed off by the Spearmen in the rear, which is kind of funny just because Daenor went for the Bane Chant onto them and missed it. But it didn't matter. They rolled a lot of 6s, so got them out. Then we have the Spearmen. These Spearmen who went back into my Dragon, got the counter charge there. Don't manage a whole lot, but they do manage to disorder it, so I won't be flying into the flank or the rear of Samacris. And that's about it. So we're going to move into turn 4 for the Undead. So turn 4 for the Undead, always a good thing when it's not opening with a picture of double ones, right? So we've got the Vampire Lord going into the front of the Spearmen here. I mean, hopefully this works. I have a rear charge with my Wraiths, though. So the Wraiths that were right here were within range, within 14 inches of the Spearmen, and because they're on the hill, they can see them. Granted, they don't get the +1 Thunderous because they're a flying unit, but they do get a rear charge, so, you know, take what you can get, I guess. I send some zombies into the front of the Knights, and that's more for fun than anything else. I just, you know, wanted to do it. I could, so I did. These zombies are just sitting in the back. Plus, it allows my Necromancer to advance forward and be a bit more aggressive. I, again, go for the flank charge with my Whites there. And then I move this unit of Revenants forward to get the 1-inch flank surge onto the Spearmen. Granted, it will be hindered because I'm still in the terrain. Or am I perfectly out of the terrain? It's either hindered or it's not, but either way, I'm going to take it because, you know, it's 50 attacks on 5s and 4s or 50 attacks on 4s and 4s. Either way is good. And yeah, that'll be it. So let's see how it all goes. First off, we got Daenor, again with a double one. I had him at 5 wounds after Morgoth drained him again. It's not a true double one though, because it's, you know, they're not at double one. It's just funny because I think that's the 5th one of the game, 4th or 5th. Just a lot of double ones this game. And over here, I do get these Spearmen pretty high. I do also cast a weakness onto them from the Necromancer over here on the hill, but it looks like I do not manage the kill, which is fine. My Dragon plus the Wraiths, though, do manage to kill off the other unit of Spearmen, and not to be too dramatic, but yeah, the Knights get killed off by the zombies, so that's always fun. I did roll, or no, I didn't even roll the Whites because the Whites weren't damaged, so there's no reason to roll to see if I get Life Leech. I just rolled to see if the zombies would do it, and they did. So zombies get that kill there? Yes. And that is the end of turn 4 for the Undead. Let's see what turn 5 looks like for the Basilean player. So turn 5, we've got the weakness Spearman charging into the front of my Undead, or my Revenant King there, and then we have Samacris just deciding to charge into the Whites because why not? It's whatever. It's garbage time now, so go for it, guys. And let's see how that all goes. It doesn't go very well for Basilia, and at the end of the game, it looks a bit like this. So we just skip on to Undead turn 5. I go in for the flank again with my Horde of guys. Horde of Revenants onto the very damaged and the very damaged Spearman there. This guy was not injured in the fight, so instead just flies over to grab one of the objectives, which is over here, worth 1. My Dragon plus Morgoth decided to just burn down Daenor, and then I move forward on Samacris here with the Whites. They were disordered, so they could only charge Samacris. They kill it pretty easily, and then I moved the zombies here. They could I'm I'm not sure what they did. These zombies move forward, but anyway, this is actually the final picture of the game. I don't have another one, but there is a turn 6, which is my zombies just go and grab this 1-pointer, and then I have 2, 1, 1, 2, right? So I have max points. I've killed my opponent's entire army, except for the Arbalist, which I also can kill during my turn, so we just pop it because I have a unit of whites that can move forward, get surged 1, so yeah. And the Arbalist does not do any damage on its turn, in case you're wondering. But yeah, so it ends up being a max victory, so that's a 25-point victory, and I'm sitting pretty high in the rankings right now, going into Game 3. But there are 4 undefeateds, including me, and in this tournament, we had 3 Undead and 3 Trident Realm, and it's always an interesting matchup, because Trident Realm is, it can be a very, very good counter to Undead. They're really strong against it with that Ensnare. Granted, I have a lot of 3+ to hit units, and I have a lot of Striders, so I'm not, stacking that disadvantage as high, but there were 2 different types of Trident Realm in the Undefeated Realm. One was a set of Placoderms. It was a bunch of Placoderms, which I think I would do very well against, while the Undead army was a Vampire army, and I think, again, I do very well against Vampires, because there's vampire infantry, and I'm faster than they are, and I can just one-shot them. So they don't have the double dragon. They had 1 dragon and Alona. The only thing I have to do is make sure that Alona stays the hell away from any of my characters until I'm ready to deal with her, because I played against her in the past. She's really good. But anyway, I think I can take either of those lists. But the third list is a Naiad and Tidal Swarm focused Trident Realm list, and I was like, I really don't want to fight that. So of course that's what I'm fighting. So here we go. Starting out, we have a horde of Naiad Ensnares with the Dragon Shard Shield. We have a troop of Naiad Heart Piercers with the Piercing Arrow, double piercing there. We have 2 regiments of Tidal Swarm. We have 2 hordes of Depth Horrors, one of whom has the Potion of the Caterpillar. We have a horde of Gigas with the Blade of Slashing. We have 3 Knuckers, a Coral Giant, a Depth Horror, and Eternal. And when you're building something in, what is this, Battle Scribe, there's an error which the Eternal can't bring heroic items. So later down here, one of the Envoy has the Trickster Wand, the Depth Horror has the Trickster Wand, not the Envoy, but it wouldn't let me do it. So anyway, Depth Horror Eternal with the Trickster's Wand. We have a Naiad Envoy with the Loot, then we have another Envoy with Bastion 2, and finally the Trident King. So my opponent's list here, like I said, I was really worried about playing against it with my Undead, but in general, I really like it as a core concept. I like the Heart Piercer troop. I think that's a strong piece. The Piercing Arrow is probably a waste of time. I'd probably take that and the Blade of Slashing, and there's a lot of good 15-point items in the game. So take those, or maybe take those and then take out the, I don't know, the Dragon Shard Shield, which is a situational item. Take a 10-point item instead, and then take the Scrying Gem, because I do think it's in fact that good. And the rest of the items in the list are solid as well. Triple Knucker is really good. The Coral Giant is interesting now. It being on a 75 mil base is good and bad, because it's a monster that just takes up space, right? That's the point of a Coral Giant, which, obviously if you're bigger, that's better. But you also can get charged by more units, your flanks are bigger, it's harder to fit you in places, so it's a bit of, give and take there with the Coral Giant. The Depth Horror Eternal with the Trickster's Wand, that is a really good pick, really interesting pick as well, just because the Trickster's Wand is an item I keep looking at and going like, it's cheap enough, like it's priced aggressively, right? So people will bring it, but it doesn't do a whole lot, right? Like, it's hard to use it. You got to buy a horse for 25 points now in every army. So like, what is the point of this? And the answer is stuff like the Depth Horror Eternal, which is just naturally height 3, and doesn't have anything to do during its movement phases. It's sort of like an ASB a lot of the time, and it's sort of a backfield piece, like a Lycanus as well. And I really like the Trickster's Wand there. It's just good. It's especially against an army like mine that has so many wizards, it's just gonna slam out some damage. The only thing in this army I really don't like is the Trident King, and it's not because I don't like the Trident King. I do. I think the Trident King is an excellent piece, but this army doesn't have Ector in it yet, and I think Ector is an auto-include. So the only change I would make is the Trident King there, and I can understand why you wouldn't make that change. Otherwise, really strong army, really good, really well put together. And here is the scenario. We're playing Salt the Earth. So Salt the Earth is another scenario with 10, or with not 10, but 7 objective markers. There's one in the exact center, and then each player places 3 points anywhere on the table. So yeah, it's all right. It's interesting in the way that if you control an objective at the end of your turn, you can destroy it and remove it from play. So the only objective that you can't do that with is the center objective. Everything else you can just blow up. So it's a very interesting scenario, and again an example of agency throughout the game instead of just going, it's the end of turn 6, you lose. There's not even dice to roll. So I like this one. I think it's solid. And let's get into the table. I will say before this, now my opponent's army is not painted. That's not a problem for me at all. But it was really interestingly modeled. They had a bunch of 3D model kits, or 3D printed models that I really liked, and in fact, he gave me one, and I'm sure they gave their other 2 opponents one as well. It was like this little crab with a backpack, and I love it. Really cool little piece to give your opponents. I'm really into it. My opponent obviously was great. So anyway, let's talk about the table real quick. First off, starting in the bottom right, we have a height, oh look at that circle, we have a height 4 impassable. Right above that, a rather large height 3 hill, a height 2 obstacle, not really attached to it, but very close to it. Then we have a height 1 little cornfield there, a height 8 forest. Then to the left of that, we have another height 3 hill. Below that, another height 2 obstacle, and then another height 8 forest, and sort of in the middle of the table. Actually, it was originally next to this objective, which is illegal, so we just moved it over a little bit, moved it that 3, right? And then there's a height 4 impassable. So that is the end of that. This is actually after my opponent's first turn movement, because I forgot to take a picture before that. So guess who goes first? But anyway, let's talk about deployment, just so you get a feel for the units. Oh no, let's talk about the objectives. So first off, we've got one here, one way in the backfield here, the center objective, and then this objective. So these 3 objectives are the ones my opponent placed. I think this one they actually just forgot to place and didn't notice until turn 2. I just thought they were like, oh yeah, I'll put it way in the backfield, because they chose that side anyway. So anyway, and then I placed an objective here, here, and then there's one somewhere behind this hill. So I built a little bit of a triangle, trying to get, again, I was trying to deploy on that side of the table to block them with this house, because I can fly, they can't. The house is good for me. But anyway, I ended up losing that roll and having to deploy over here, which is fine with me as well. But as far as my opponent's army, starting on the left, we have the horde of Naiad and Snares. Then we have a regiment of Tidal Swarm. We have the Coral Giant. Right here is the Naiad Envoy with Bastion 2. Then we have a Knocker. We have the Depth Horrors with nothing right there. No, wait, no. These are the Depth Horrors with Blessing of the Gods, then. Or Blade of Slashing. I'm not sure. No, Blade of Slashing was the other one. So we got the Depth Horrors with an item. Then we have the Depth Horror Eternal with the Wand right there. Of course, the Trident King. The second Envoy, this is the Banechant one. Then we have the second horde of... guys, Depth Horrors. Wow, I forgot that already. Depth Horrors, and then we have the troop of Naiad Heart Piercers with the Piercing Arrow. We have the horde of Gigas with the Blade of Slashing, and then we have both the Knuckers right here. On the Undead side of things, we have a regiment of zombies. We have a horde of Revenants. Wow, forgot my own army there. So we have a horde of Revenants with the Undead Rats and the Hammer of Measured Force. Behind them is Morgoth. Then we have the horde of Whites. I believe these are the ones with Blade of Slashing. Then we have the non-inspiring Necromancer with Weakness. We have a regiment of Wraiths. We have the Revenant King with the Brew of Sharpness and Surge 8. We have the horde of Whites with +1 speed. We have the regiment of Wraiths. And then we have the Vampire Lord over here with the Chalice of Wrath, and then off to the right of that is the last regiment of zombies. And right here is the Inspiring Necromancer. I think I actually swapped the model each game, but that didn't get confusing for my opponents. It was consistent. These models are the same, right? So anyway, so that's it for deployment. So we're going into turn 1 here. And it's weirdly the same picture. So yeah, we have off here on the left, you can see the Naiad and Snares just running forward as fast as they want to go. They don't really... I wonder if my opponent was thinking about burning this objective real quick, or if they were just going to sit on it because, you know, my army is very oriented off to the right here. So they might just be planning to sit on it and do nothing. We have the Coral Giant aggressively pushing towards this objective along with a Tidal Swarm to grab it, and obviously some of the crabs are falling off, so this one's a little less full than the other one. But anyway, so over there we have a Knucker taking sort of the midfield here. It's always a dangerous piece, especially now that it has a Crush 1 instead of just having the Thunderous 3. So it's Crush 1, Thunder 1 instead of Thunder 3. I think it's better now. We have the Depth Horrors advancing, as you can see. Oh, they had Pathfinder, didn't they? That's what they had. Then we have the Eternal here, just taking the center of the field, along with the Trident King. The other Depth Horror is hiding behind a wall, along with the Envoy with the other rule, the loot. So it's got Banechant. Then we have these guys. Just, I think their plan is to sort of thread this hill, because it makes it so they can either A, get onto the hill so they have some good vantage shooting, or B, they can hide behind a wall and make it so, you know, everything that's not rates that charges them is -2. So it's pretty good. The crab people grab the hill along with both of the Knuckers, and they are just perfectly out of charge range of everything that is not my Vampire Lord. My Vampire Lord can charge one of the, or this Knucker here, but if I do, I mean, I'm going to charge by crabs and charge by Knuckers. Ugh. And also, I'm not likely to kill a Knucker in one go because they also have Ensnare, right? So I've got 10 attacks on 4s and 2s then? No thanks. That's not great. And with that, my opponent doesn't have a whole lot of shooting that can reach this turn, and so we'll just move into turn 1 for the Undead. So yeah, just showing, oh, there is one thing, which is my opponent casts Bastion onto, I believe they cast Bastion onto these Depth Horrors and get it off. So yeah, with that, let's move on to turn 1 for the Undead. So first off, my zombies, as always, are just hiding behind a wood, and I, in fact, just sort of crab walk a little bit over here. After watching my opponent's crabs, I learned the technique. So we crab walk a little bit more behind the forest to hide better. I do not want my zombies doing anything in this game besides grabbing objectives. So, or maybe jamming people up late. Morgoth flies into this perfect little Morgoth hole. No one can see them, or can see him except for this one Envoy, which is going to be my target. So going for that real quick, I have my Revenant's just advancing forward a little bit. I want to be able to threaten most of these units. Everything is in my front. I think at the end I actually should have put these guys in my flank, but I'll talk about that next turn. So yeah, everything I made sure to keep in my front. I move forward, just maintaining my battle line here. I actually had to bounce it back a little bit just because Knuckers are so dangerous with their, nimble charge 18. I don't want to give them any flanks, so I had to maintain this battle line to keep that flankless. Speaking of that, my Vampire Lord on Dragon advances forward on the Knuckers here. I'm out of charge range of the crab. I'm within charge range of both the Knuckers, and unfortunately, again, because the Vampire Lord has been moved to a Titanic base, so it's on that 75, it looks cool, but mechanically it's worse because we're on a 50 and butted up against this wall. It's impossible to charge me with both Knuckers, right? Because one would be a corner charge. But as it is, they can both charge into my Vampire Lord if they so please. But I don't think they can one-round me, so I don't really care too much. I mean, I care, but I don't care, if you get it. So, yeah, looking at that, otherwise, everything just sort of sits still. I've got my Necromancers moving forward to slam out some weakness. I've got weakness on... My plan is to weakness up these two Knuckers because I don't really care about any of this right now. So I've got one, or this one's going to go for the front Knucker. This one's going to go for the back because I can't see the front one. So going for both those weaknesses, and then I have one... what is it? The Icy Breath to do on the front Knucker from my... Vampire Lord. So I'm not looking for a waiver, just looking to freeze it because Knuckers always have some weird thing that they're going to do, right? There's always some weird trick that they can get into my backline and charge my wizard or whatever. So I don't think they can because they're in my front arc right now and they have to hit the corner, but I might have misplaced this when I was, not really paying attention because it should be flush. I mean, not, actually against the edge, but parallel. That's what I mean. Should be parallel with my front unit to make it so you can't actually hit the corner of it. So the Knucker shenanigans can't go on. But anyway, I go for the freeze breath anyway, and then I've got the drain life 9 onto this envoy, which is just a real dicey thing. It's 4s and 3s, I want to say. And it is currently benefiting from Bastion, or maybe it's not. But anyway, here is the end of turn shot. So this is, no, that's not the end of turn shot. This is the end of turn shot. Okay, so end of turn shot. First off, Morgoth manages to kill off this envoy. That's super lucky. First blood goes to me. Sniped out one of my opponent's inspiring sources and the only inspiring source on this side of the table. So I'm really into that. And then I do manage to get both the weaknesses off and the freeze onto this front Knucker. I don't manage to do as much damage as I wanted to do because I believe it is def 4. You know, I'm on 4s because I ignore stealthy with Icy Breath. So I'm on 4s and 4s, but I was going for some, you know, swing for the fences kind of damage there, and I only managed 2, which is pretty average. So with that, let's go into turn 2. So turn 2 for the Trident realm looks a little like this, and this is where those tricksy fish people get into it. So this is what I was talking about. I should have had the tidal swarm here in my flank, because I could have made it so the coral giant was in the front and these guys are in the flank. A flank for them, it doesn't matter. I'm not sure they have Pathfinder, and it's irrelevant if they do. They get 18 attacks on 5s, and then they wound me on 5s. The big thing here is I don't want them in my front, right? Because it allows my opponent to do this and advance actually forward, as opposed to letting my unit go forward. And on top of it, this is one of my real true undead units. So I hit on a 4, now I'm hitting on a 5, and I wound on a 4 because I brought the Hammer of Measured Force, so I don't even get the extra benefit of fighting swarms here. So not great. These swarms go into my rates. I don't really care about that because these swarms were going to go into one of my units anyway, and I prefer they fight rates and not my whites. So I need these whites to do damage. So, yep, that's fine with me. The battle line moves forward. They are getting the hell away from Morgoth, which is fair enough. And then both the Knuckers here go into my zombies. I'm not so sure about that because they only have 12 attacks, right? So on average, they're going to get 8 hits, and then they're going to sink like 7 of them, right? So that's an 8 twice because my vampire is there. And if they fail it, I can very easily get some cheeky little surge flanks, and that's not what Knuckers want. So like I could get this one into the flank, kill one of them, and then get the zombies into the other one and just strip the Thunderous out, right? But, you know, my opponent did go for it, so we'll see about that. And then the rest of the line just advances forward. We've got a few guns to shoot, but my army is pretty high defense and does not have line of sight onto my squishier targets like my necromancers because they choose to not get onto the hill. So with that said, let's see how it all turns out. Starting on the left, yeah, the Tidal Swarm do not do any damage to my Revenants, which is fine. These Tidal Swarm unfortunately do 1 damage to my rates, and that's not super likely, right? So they've got 9 attacks on 5s to hit and 6s to wound, right? So they nail 3 hits, and then they've got that 50-50 shot to get a wound. If they fail it, it's real bad, because if they fail it, I can do weird surge stuff into the, surge stuff. I can do weird surge stuff into the Eternal here. I could go for a front charge onto the Trident King or onto the Depth Horrors or whatever, all these ensnare units. And then here, yeah, again, just should have shown them my flank. Mistake, but an important one to learn. And over here on the far right, you can't quite see it, but yeah, they do manage to one round my zombies, and they don't roll super well on the kill. They just get the I think they actually rolled poorly on the wounds. Well, slightly. They got 6 wounds, meaning they needed 9 twice, and they sink it. So that's unfortunate. Would be nice to kill out those Knuckers, but it does do one thing that's really good, which is they are now in a line because my opponent decides to, because I can, you know, still do surge shenanigans at them, just decides to face them both like this, and with these units being the exact same height, that can cause some real issues later in the game, but we'll see about that on Undead turn 2. So Undead turn 2, This is the end of movement. First off, we've got some whites flying over here into the woods. The plan is to surge them into the coral giant, because if I surge them into the coral giant, I cannot be charged by the naiad ensnarers, because they're a little too forward facing. So I can get a free turn against the coral giant. It charges me back, and then I'm not hindered on the counter charge on it. So right now I'll be on 5s a hit, right? But it's the best time to do it. I've got the zombies positioned to mess around if these guys do decide to enter the woods. Then I've got go into the tidal swarm. That's unfortunate. I go into the tidal swarm. That's unfortunate as well. But I do get the double charge here onto the Trident King. So I've got, because this one is speed 8, so it is a 16-inch charge. So I get the charge onto the Trident King, and then I also take my Undead guy, the Revenant King. I'm going to keep forgetting because I want to call it a dragon and it's not. So I get my Revenant King there and the whites into the Trident King, and then I also can drain life at it. This Knucker decided to make it so they were so worried about Morgoth just flying over here and getting another envoy that my opponent placed the Knucker, I think, a little off. And it's one of those things where I don't think they made a mistake here as much as it's just really hard to stop Morgoth, right, from doing whatever Morgoth wants to do. I actually wanted to start draining down the Knucker itself because Drain Life also does not take stealthy, but I went for this double onto the Trident King, and I need to make sure that happens. So I'm going to go for the kill right here by getting a drain as well. So that's the plan. My Vampire Lord on Dragon just flies up out of line of sight of everything to mess around. I also have 10 inches to this Naiad troop here. So that's actually a pretty easy kill. I think they're a 9/11 nerve. I've got 10 shots on 4s and 3s. So yeah, it's a pretty, it's not the hardest one, right? It's not the hardest kill to get. Only need that 8 twice, I think, on average, or 7 or 8 twice to get it, and a pretty good chance that they will be wavered, which is actually what I'm fishing for right now. And then finally in the bottom right here, I've got the whites, or the Wraiths, too many W's. So the Wraiths here facing off against the Knuckers. I am still going to go for the surge here. It's a 2-inch surge, 2 or 3-inch surge. I'm not exactly sure which. If I don't get it, it's pretty bad. But if I do get it, I actually think it ruins my opponent's ability to maneuver with these for a turn. So yeah, that's a very important one going on there. But it does mean I'm going to have no weakness this turn because both of my Necromancers are going for surges, and I have to get the Morgoth drain life right now, in my opinion. So let's see how it all turns out. This is the end of turn 2 for the Undead, and it goes really well. This is a good turn. First off, I get a couple wounds onto the Coral Giant, a couple more, I think, so I'm on 5s a hit, 5s a hit, and then 3s to wound. So I've got like 4-ish wounds on average, plus a brutal, but I think I managed actually 5 wounds onto it right now. So I like that because this is the bad turn. So, you know, getting extra damage is obviously good. You can see us laying out the line of sight arc here. These depth horrors, I believe, cannot see my dragon, which is, again, just serendipity. I went for it, and well, I mean, I placed out markers before I moved things, but when I measured it, yeah, this is just, I'm not drawing it well, just unable to see the corner of my base, so it cannot see me. But this guy can, and the Eternal is actually a little too good to just let do whatever it wants, so I have to face my Revenant King like so. And because I gave the rear to this unit, I have to make it so this unit of whites just accepts their death. So I traded for the Trident King right now. But if I kill it off, or if I get this kill, I can then pick up the Envoy when I go into it with the Revenant, and then the Dragon can come in here, and so on and so forth. It could get real bad real quickly for my opponent. But the other thing, oh yeah, the Hex Wand went onto this Necromancer last round. I forgot to mention that. And when I went for my Surge, I got 4. I think I only needed a Surge 3 here as well. Maybe I needed a Surge 4. But I got 4 on it, meaning I did 8 wounds to myself by casting Surge. That is crazy good. I'm really into it. I think it's really good for like units like this, and I'm glad my opponent saw the opportunity and took it. And yeah, I do manage, the rates here do get their surge off. They do 2 wounds to the front knucker. They don't get a waiver. That's not that unlikely. I mean, they're 13-15s. So, but it's really, really, really good because this back knucker, because it's flush, right? And it's exactly like they are running in parallel right now. They're running in tandem. And because of that, it makes it so this unit can't really back up and do anything. And then this unit just can't charge anything, right? It can't combo charge with the other knucker. It has to, if it wants to, it can just run out of the way. And then this knucker cannot charge into my necromancer because this building is blocking me just slightly. So it can't go this way because it, backs up 1 inch, pivots to miss me, and then pivots, like this-ish, right? And if it goes this way, it does the same thing because of my unit edge. So it's just really good. Both the knuckers there are trapped. While this other knucker isn't really trapped, it's probably going to go into my whites and kill them. But meh, happens. So we'll move into turn 3. Oh, and then, yeah, my Revenants managed to kill off their swarm, which I'm like, okay. And then my whites don't kill off their swarm, and I'm like, oh, that's real bad. Because the whites, they only have 12 attacks on 5s, right? But then they wound on 2s. I can't quite sink it. There's no inspiring on them either. It was really... I really wanted that this turn, but next turn will be fine as well. It's just not as good because I went for this aggressive play, right? Like if the Tidal Swarm's gone, these units now actually have to worry about the whites or the wraiths as well. So anyway, moving forward, turn 3. Turn 3 for the Trident Realm. First off, on the far left, you can see these guys just pivoting to face towards the flank of my whites. Fair enough, I can't fly, so I'm gonna have to kill this Coral Giant or get murdered. So that's the plan there. The Coral Giant does go into the whites, because he needs to turn off my flight, because otherwise I'll just go 7 and surge into their flank. So we go for that. The Depth Horrors here go into the front of my Revenants, and again showing off how bad of a choice the Hammer of Measured Force was. And it's funny because, you might go, well, you don't know what you're going to face. But I did, because I helped the TO check over lists, because this is the first tournament in this area for 3rd edition, so we were checking it for legality, and I was going through, I'm like, man, the Hammer's really bad. I should swap this out. But I felt wrong using that meta knowledge, right? That no one else really has. Only the TO has it and me, and the TO wasn't playing. They were an alternate. So I'm like, I don't feel right doing that, so I didn't change my list. But yeah, definitely should not or will not bring the Hammer on this unit in the future. I'll bring something else. So the Depth Horrors, because they're depth 3, go into, or they're def, not depth. Depth 3 go into the front of my Revenants. That's not a great fight, but it's not bad. I'm still def 5. These guys have no crushing, or they're crush 1. And then I can maybe 1 round them. I probably can't, but I can maybe 2 round them. Then the Tidal Swarm again go into my rates, hoping to win that 50-50. The guy, what is he called? Eternal. Yeah, the Eternal goes into my Revenant King. So by going into the Revenant King here, just needs to nail 1 wound, and I think it has 4 attacks-ish. So if it nails that 1 wound, things are really good. If it doesn't nail that 1 wound, these guys are gone. And then everything else charges into these whites. Got to get rid of them immediately. Fair enough. This knucker, which was behind this knucker here, just runs off to mess around with my dragon, while this knucker turns around to threaten my backfield, which is fair. These wraiths now have to choose which one they're going to go after, and they have to get the surge. This is exactly what you want to do against Undead. You want to make it so they have to surge to charge you at best, or at least, right? So pretty smooth move by my opponent. And then the Envoy just moves over here to make sure all this has inspiring. And that's going to be it. So let's see how it all goes. First off, this fight, yeah. And boom. So first off, this was a double 1 in my opponent, or that ended up with too many wounds getting to double 1. So they get 1 shot there. My Revenant King does get grounded. My opponent wins the 50-50 again here. That's super unfortunate for me. Like, really, really unfortunate. But gets that 50-50, grounds my wraiths. And then my opponent rolls pretty well here. Looks like got 6 6, no, that's 7 wounds. Yeah, 7 wounds onto my Revenants. That's pretty good. But it's, you know, they don't really care too much about it. My whites end up taking 2 wounds from the Coral Giant. That's pretty bad, but it's not really relevant because these guys are coming in to kill me anyway. So yeah, and then Morgoth just ready to do Morgoth things. So let's see how the Undead turn 3 goes in Reprisal. So Undead turn 3. This is a tough turn, which you can tell by my bad picture. So first off, we've got this is actually the end of turn shot because it's getting a little wild. First off, I send my Revenant King into this Eternal. I can one-shot it, but it's not super likely. I really want to, because if I can one-shot it, I can then just face towards my opponent. These 2 units can charge me, but only in the front and only if the crabs move first. Then I go into the Depth Horrors. Again, I don't need this one to one-shot, and I don't think it's likely. I take my Wraiths into the Swarms. I need to make sure they're gone this turn, because if it's one extra turn, I'm not sure what I do. These Wraiths go 7 inches. They've got a 1-inch surge into the flank of this Knucker, so that's a pretty easy kill, because I go for a very risky play with this dragon, but it's a game-winning play if I can get it to work. Because my opponent put their Naiad Envoy in the flank of the Depth Horrors here. And I remember at the time, my opponent went, I'm not sure if I want to put it there. And I'm like, well, I mean, it is a front charge if my dragon charges you, and it's next to a wall, and I don't have Strider, right? So it's 5s to hit you, and so on and so forth, right? And I'm not trying to like goad people into doing stuff, but I forgot about Morgoth, right? So, and my opponent also apparently forgot about Morgoth. So it comes my turn, and I'm like, okay, I take the charge with the dragon because Morgoth can fly 20 over here, not just give them dread. So all these units currently have dread. I couldn't place it in a place where I also gave this dread, which I wanted to very badly, but it doesn't fit. So I gave these 3 units dread, and I get to drain into this combat, right? So I'm drain 9, and that's a def 4 hero, right? That's another 3 wounds. It doubles my average wounds. Actually, a little bit more than doubles them. But anyway, yeah, so I go for that. So I've got Morgoth there, all that, and then I take my whites into the Coral Giant again, hoping to get a kill off, and I take my zombies and just decide to hold up the envoy, or the ensnares for a turn with them. So I just move them forward, and then I cast Surge with this guy, and I get a charge there, but it's 6s to hit. Who cares? They're just there to, or it's actually 7s. But they're just there to hold them up, and I don't even think I succeeded at the Surge because it was a bit long. But this is the end of turn shot, as I said before. So first off, yeah, I don't kill these guys off. I do a fair amount of damage though, so that's good. I don't kill the Depth Horror Eternal here off. That's real bad. But it's not that it was likely to happen, but I also just roll abysmally there, so it just felt really bad. My Wraiths here managed to kill off the Tidal Swarm. That's really good. And then over here, I do this combat. I actually did it first, right? Because it's super relevant for what's happening in the rest of the round. So first off, we got Morgoth. Morgoth does 4 wounds to this envoy, so already got 4 on it. My dragon then charges in and gets 3 wounds, right? So that is 7 wounds onto this thing. I believe it's a 10-12, and I have dread. So, oh no, I'm sorry. Morgoth got 3 wounds, so it's at 6 wounds, right? So I've got dread. It's a 9-11, right? 9-11 with dread dropping down to an 8-10. I need a 4 twice, and I fail it. I get a 3, and I'm like, wow, I just lose this game. Because if I had succeeded there, I have a flank charge onto the Depth Horrors right here, right? After killing this guy off. And then it's on 4s, granted, but I have 20 attacks, right, on 4s. I can sink around 8 wounds, and I have dread. So, so bad, because the only thing that can happen is that these things get a counter charge onto me, right? The Knucker can't see me, the crabs can't see me. The only other thing that can see me is this Knucker, which we'll get to later. But it'll only be this one round, and I have Fury, so even if they spike it, I don't think it's a fully healed Vampire Lord, right? So they only have to crush 1. They come into me, and then I get punched. I do a fair number of wounds. I can kill them on my next round really easily, and it protects my Revenant King from getting this reared by this unit. It'll just be a rear from a Knucker and the front from the Eternal, which is bad, but it's not terrible, right? So the Knucker gets what, like 8 wounds on average. The Eternal gets like 2 wounds. That's 10 wounds. I'm still a -19, right? With no wounds. But I failed it. So yeah, I'm like, wow, what a bad bit. And then it gets worse because my wraiths go into the flank here. And they do what Undead do, which is I've got 24 attacks, but I'm hitting on 4s, and I hit with 8 of them. And then I don't, obviously I don't sink all 8 wounds. I do not do fairly well. Then I roll that break check, and I roll another 3. It's not double 1s, but I don't even waver that Knucker. So the Knucker is now going to go into the flank of the dragon. I didn't kill that. I'm going to lose the other dragon. Wow, what a bad turn. But that's what's exciting, right? This is a really exciting game so far. Really into it. Turn 4, you can tell how intense it's getting. I didn't even take a picture of the die. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I said I did all of this first, and then something crazy happens over here. The whites just 1 round that, or 2 round that Coral Giant. Go into it. They do like 10 wounds. They sink an insane number of wounds onto it. Kill it 1 shot. So this game is a whole bunch of like, okay, let's build this Rube Goldberg machine. None of it works, and then something happens off in the corner. So it's pure excitement, right? So I'm really into it. Let's get into that turn 4. Turn 4, we'll open with a double 1. My opponent double 1s this. The Knucker goes into my flank, does 2 wounds to me, gets a double 1. It's just funny to take a picture of it. And that Envoy, I did 6 wounds to it. It regened 5 of them, I want to say, back on a 4+. So it's like the turn didn't even happen. It's just, insult to injury there. And here's the end of the turn because, So because I didn't kill this Knucker off, I didn't kill the Knucker off. I get flank charged. I get flank charged by these crabs. I'm like, come on. It was at best a front charge on that average, but yeah, I get killed off there. The wraiths are gone, and this game is going from bad to worse with each turn that passes. So we got the Knucker into my flank. I'm flightless, but. And this is where when people talk about like the mighty rule, it's again one of those things where you're like it's more interesting than anything else. I don't think it actually stops too much of the single characters stopping you from charging, but it does make it so you have to try a little harder, right? Because I'm disordered right now, I can't rear charge these guys because this is blocking me. You'd be like, oh, it's not blocking you, and it's not mighty. But when you're disordered, you can't ignore characters. So, poopy. And obviously they kill off that dragon. So that's pretty obvious. The other Knucker goes into the front of my wraiths. This is because I'm just barely out of charge range here. I did try to build it so they couldn't flank charge me, but it wasn't doable. So they get into the wraiths here. Again, they disorder them. The Knucker probably should get a disorder onto those wraiths, but I was like, come on, just give me 1 turn where my wraiths aren't disordered or dead. So yep, they end up getting disordered there. The crabs have turned towards my dragon because my dragon's kind of trapped. It can fight the Knucker and prepare for the crabs, or it can go for a crazy charge over here, which is I can get into this guy again on 5s to hit, right? And then I am just within 6 inches because my opponent could not finagle this any better. So I could go for that long bomb bit. So we'll see about that. But yeah, it regen almost all of its wounds back, so it's basically the same thing again with +1. Over here, you can see the envoys have to charge into my zombies. They have no other targets because my wraiths have turned all the way around, getting ready to come into these fights and hope for things to happen. The big guys here, the depth horrors go back into my revenants. Those depth horrors are doing so well. I've got 12 wounds on me. It's crazy. Or is it crazy? I don't know. I don't like it. I mean, they have what, 18 attacks on 3s, so they get like 12 hits on average. They get like 6 wounds, right? So I guess 12 is completely average, and I'm just upset. So anyway, I'm glad we did that math together. But yeah, they're at 12 wounds. Not good for me, but they're not dead, so that's good. And we move forward into Undead turn 4. Things are getting good. We've got the zombies going for the charge here. I think they're at 7 wounds. That's whatever. I'll take this, 5 or 6s to hit. It doesn't matter to me. Here's another mistake I haven't been mentioning in this round, which is even in the game I didn't notice, and I kept noticing on my opponent's turn. I should be burning these, right? I should have burnt this because I'm not going to hold this side of the table. Should have burnt this, and then I should have burnt these, right? I was sitting on these. Like this one with the rates that died to that Knucker. I should have burnt it there. This one, I don't think I've had an opportunity to burn, but I want to. But I should have burnt this, and I definitely should have burnt this, right? Get them out of here. But I haven't yet. So, especially because I've been losing units, right? And I'm going for, you know, when I went for this dragon on that risky play, I should have just been like, because it's at the end of the turn, so I know how the turn unfolded. Should have been like, okay, we don't want that anymore then. But I haven't been because I haven't been paying attention. So anyway, right here in the middle, the depth horrors get flank charged by my whites and front charged by the revenants. The whites end up with an unhindered charge because they charge out of the woods, and then the whites or the revenants trap them from having to go. Well, they wouldn't have entered the woods anyway, but yeah, so they're unhindered there. That's pretty good. I need to make sure that these guys die, and I don't think they can do it because again, 5's a hit, 4's a wound. Don't bring the hammer. So not the best. And then I've got the whites here, or the rates here, going back into the Knucker. Again, I have to kill this Knucker off. It's got, I think, 2 wounds on it. I think this one's at 2 and this one's at a fair number, like 5. Because I got that flank charge off. They were both at 2, by the way, before I did that flank charge. But yeah, so I've got 2 wounds on this one. I need to make sure I kill that off so I don't just lose my rates again to another double flank charge, or maybe even, no, it'd be a double. They can't get a triple. Morgoth flies over here to be annoying, hopefully trying to, so I'm going to go for a drain onto this Knucker here, because if I can get a waiver on this, that's really big, because it gums up this unit as well. They're going to have to go this way instead of at the rates, which is unlikely to kill that Knucker off. And I'm just perfectly within 6 inches of this one, and I also am getting dread on this. It might look like my dragon decided to go into this. It didn't. It's just my model won't work with these Knuckers, and I decided to countercharge the Knucker here, just trying to get the kill off, because it is, again, at like 4 or 5 wounds, so it should be pretty easy with dread, and it needs to happen. So let's see how it all unfolds. Here is the end of turn shot. Let's start on the left. First off, zombies. Nah, they didn't. They do literally 0 wounds. I don't even think they hit. Next up, we've got the depth horrors. They are gone. That is really good for me. Then we've got the rates here, failing to kill this Knucker. We got Mortibris going into this Knucker, failing again to kill the Knucker, and in fact, did 0 wounds to it. So that's just kind of funny. And then we've got the dragon. Oh no, that's right. I didn't go after the Knucker. Wow, what a mistake. I should have gone after that. I go after the envoy for some reason. God, what am I doing? Oh, what a big mistake. Okay, yeah, Morgoth goes after the envoy, does kill it off. The dragon goes after the wounded Knucker up here, kills it. It's a little too late. But these crab people are staring me down. And yeah, it's an interesting game. But again, there are tokens, so I can't burn this one. This is when I start paying attention to burning. I can't burn this one right now because it's the center one, and then the only one I'm around is this one, and the ensnares actually have it because they're higher unit strength than my zombies. So yikes. Let's see what turn 5 brings. Turn 5, exciting game. First up, we've got on the left, the boring ensnares go into my boring zombies, looking for that easy kill. The zombies are down to 6 wounds. Oh, it looks like they did do a wound. They must regen it back. So yeah, then we've got the Eternal deciding to come around. The idea here is just to get out of line of sight of the whites, just looking to preserve that unit strength. This is a smart play, making it so they can hold the center objective if the units die, while these units can also just die, right? Make sure you have that unit strength. We have all the units charge into these raids. We got a front from the Knucker that I did nothing to. We got a flank and a flank here. Oof. Morgoth, come on, bud. You could have helped this, but I don't go for it. We've got the crabs here going into the front of my dragon, hoping to one-shot it. It's pretty unlikely. Crabs only have 12 attacks, so 12 attacks on 3s and 3s, so very unlikely, in fact, but going for it anyway. And that's it. So let's see how the end of the turn goes. So here's the end of the turn with my opponent's arms in the fight. First off, we have the no, this is actually the end of turn 5 for the Undead. So if we go back a picture, yeah, these wraiths are dead, for sure. And then these zombies are dead as well. And here is Undead turn 5. So I decided to take the whites into the depth horrors that were right here. It's a front charge, but I take it along with my guard here, the revenants. So we do get that one shot. It's pretty... No, this can't. Yeah, I do get that one shot, so that's pretty nice. Morgoth here makes the correct decision finally and shoots into one of the knuckers and gets the kill there, because I need to make sure that my opponent has as few units as possible. I end up going with this guy getting the weakness. I think I did weakness on the crabs. And then this guy went for weakness on the depth horror eternal. I probably should be in front of these guys, but they are out of 10. You can see these units, like I'm facing like this, and it's because I'm out of 10 of the ensnares, and I can't really go after that objective. They're in the woods. I'm gonna have to get a long surge, and they have, they're ensnares, so they have ensnare. So it's just super unlikely. And they can pop the Dragon Shard shield if they want on their turn 6, because they haven't popped it yet. So that's what's going to go down, and we go into turn 6. So turn 6, this will actually be the final round. We don't even get a roll for turn 7 because we are, you can see our clocks, but we've also been running low on round timer, and we need to get out of this store because we had a slow start. So we both know that this is the final turn. There is not going to be a roll for 7, which does impact movement. So first off, we got the Naiad and Snares just sitting here popping Dragon Shard. In fact, I don't think my opponent said that, but I would have assumed it. So yeah, pop Dragon Shard there. And then we have the Eternal here blocking the charge for my Revenants, because I want to get my Revenants to this token, right? But I can't quite get there. The remaining Knucker just runs on over to this token, and the crabs here ended up getting wavered in the previous turn. I forgot about that. My dragon had charged into these crabs, done okay on the damage, but the big got the big waver there, which is really, I did 5 wounds, so that's okay on damage, and I end up getting a waiver because Morgoth is there for the dread. So it's really big. My dragon can fly, my dragon can shoot. It's not disordered. This token is a lie. So yeah, but there's a token right here. So at the end of turn 6, my opponent did no shooting, had nothing to do, but has 1, 2, 3 tokens, while I am within 3 of 1, right? So to win this game is almost impossible. I'm going to have the Revenants here charge into the Eternal, kill it, overrun, and get within 3 of this, which is possible. We did measure that. And then I'm also going to have to kill one of these 2 units. So let's see what we got. Turn 6 for the Undead. Turn 6 Undead. This is the end of the turn. So first off, I decide to take my dragon here and Morgoth, and I just fly over to this Knucker, and I go, well, I have a Breath 10, and I've got a Drain 9, so I go for it, and I get that Knucker. It's gone. And my dragon is also, there's a token under me, so this is currently scoring 1, right? So that puts me at 1 and 2 to my opponent's 1 and 2. So again, if I just burnt these 2 tokens, right, I don't know how my opponent tries to win, but I didn't. So instead, yikes. Especially this one. Wow, I should have burnt that one. So, such a mistake. Anyway, so we're currently tied, and then we get to combat, which is I just have to kill this Eternal, who is wounded, right? He's fought my dragon, or my Revenant King, who's essentially a dragon, for 2 rounds. I think he's got 5 wounds on him right now. I charged him with the Revenants, who are not hindered, but are ensnared, so 25 attacks on 5s, and then I wound everything on 4s, right? So I've got this Revenant horde right here, right? And it goes into this guy. He's sitting on a fair number of wounds because the dragon had already, or the Revenant King, which is essentially a dragon, had already fought him twice. And so it's sitting on 3 or 4 wounds, I want to say right now. And this unit, with even on 5s due to ensnare, still gets around like what 8-ish hits and can sink like 4 wounds. So I could get this going. Unfortunately, I don't roll very well, and the Eternal lives. But I also needed I think I needed the 5. It was either a 5 or a 6 to get a sliver of my unit within range of this to try to get that win, because this is unit strength 4. This is unit strength 3. and I failed it. But I did pull out this tie. What an exciting game. What a cool end to a tournament. We added it all up, and in the end, almost all my points are still on the table because like Morgoth is 230, Dragon's 330, this unit is 240 or whatever. This unit is 260 points base. So 265 points. This is I've got both my necromancers. The other one, there he is. Both my necromancers. That's another 150 points right there. So I've got quite a few points left on the table, even though it doesn't look like it. Well, my opponent has a cheap horde, and a cheap hero because, Trident Realm has some really cheap units. So I get a very high... My opponent does not get that much attrition out of me, or that many kills out of me. Well, I get quite a few, and then we both get +2 points. And at the end of this tournament, I end up at 65 battle points, which is one under the other table. But yeah, it felt really good. I was really into it. This was a great game. I'm really excited that I got to play on this table instead of the other one, because I got to play against someone that I've never played before. That's the first one. Secondly, I got to play against an army that I wasn't very good against. And third off, we just played a killer of a game, just really back and forth, a lot of big swingy things. And they weren't swingy in the way of like, I charge your horde of ensnares with zombies and I one round you. It was stuff like, okay, I get, this dragon assured, 4+ to kill you, fail it, but then I also get a white, 10+ to kill you and nail it, right? Really exciting that way, where it's planned, but you still have those dice in there. So, really good game. At the end of the day, the only disappointment I had in the tournament was that we did a sportsmanship score, which was favorite opponent, but it was top 3, right? So if you rated someone in first place, they got 3 points. If you rated someone in second, they got 2 points. And in third place, they got 1 point, right? So you always got points no matter what, which means the minimum is 1 per game. You get 1 point per game, period. Because if all 3 of your opponents hate you, you got 3 points, right? And I lost this tournament by 1 point. I lost Paragon by 1 point, I should say. I lost Battle by 1 point too, but that's a different thing. So I lost Paragon by 1 point, but I lost it and 2 of my opponents didn't put in sportsmanship. And I'm like, guys, come on. So it's a bit of a split where I'm like, you should always vote, right? It's a mandatory vote. It's 1 through 3. You play 3 people. Just put down names. And also on the TO, I go, well, how the fuck do I lose, right, when it's a minimum system, right? So like with minimum votes, I win this event. So it's just disappointing in the end. I don't care about winning the event, but I do care about losing due to a clerical error, right? That sucks. But otherwise, really fun. I really enjoyed playing this army. I really enjoyed all 3 of my games for very different reasons, and what a fun event. I hope you guys liked it. Again, battle reports are difficult for me to do right now due to my lack of transportation, but hopefully we'll see them in the future. And if that changes, I will make sure to let you know. But until then, bye.